Chapter 1188. Back then, when you left me in the Yi family, you told me that you would come back to find me, and that you would marry me after I recovered from my injuries. However, in the end, I couldn't even feel your aura anymore. In other words, he had died and was about to be reincarnated as a human. She didn't expect that when she sensed his aura again, this man already had a fiancé. How laughable. After experiencing one life, he had forgotten about her. He even thought she was a madman. Little girl, are you joking with me? Jing Jiang sneered, I'm not a pedophile, I don't like a young child like you. Besides, I really don't know you, and I don't know about the Yi family you're talking about. I really have something to do right now, so I'll thank you another day. After saying this, the scholar cupped his fists once again and left without looking back. When that figure disappeared, Fire's body finally couldn't help but lean against Yun Luofeng's chest. Tears silently flowed down his face. Master. He clearly promised to come back and find me, but now, he has already forgotten about me. He even has a fiancé, what should I do? Fire's hands tightly gripped onto Yun Luofeng's clothes, his pale face was extremely shocking. Fire, are you sure she is the Yi family's ancestor? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. She couldn't help but suspect that such a powerful figure like the Yi family's ancestor would be bullied by a group of hoodlums here. Fire nodded his head with certainty. He has his aura on him, it's definitely him, there's no mistake. Master, what should I do now? He has completely forgotten about me. In this life, there were only two people she was waiting for. One was Yun Luofeng, and the second was the Yi family's ancestor. She had already found Yun Luofeng, but the Yi family's ancestor had already forgotten about her. Fire, let's confirm if he's the Yi family's ancestor first. The young girl raised her hand and embraced Fire. Her fingers caressed her hair as she comforted her. Master, Fire wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes. I'm sorry, I saw him being bullied just now and ran out uncontrollably, causing you trouble. Fire. Yun Luofeng lowered his head, staring at Fire, and said with a serious expression, to me, your trouble is not trouble at all. If he really is the old ancestor of the Yi family, even if you don't do anything, I will still save him. So, I don't blame you, you don't have to worry. But, if the academy sends someone to follow you, my identity will be exposed. Fire carefully looked at Yun Luofeng. She couldn't control her impulsiveness just now. Now that she thought about it, she realized that she had made a huge mistake. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. The people who came to God-Burying Mountain this time are all disciples of my cheat masters. When the time comes, I will explain things to them. You don't need to worry about your identity being exposed. Fire obediently nodded her head, and then her pair of eyes that were dyed with a bloody light turned behind her. When Enziheo met Fire's gaze, his entire body trembled, and he anxiously guaranteed, don't worry, I didn't see anything, so I won't say anything. The little loli also nodded. I didn't see anything either. Humph. Fire snorted lightly, if I hear a single word from you, then those people from before will be your fate. Chapter 1189. As soon as she finished speaking, her aura was revealed to the fullest. The powerful aura caused the world to lose its color, and it was so oppressive that it made it hard for people to breathe. Just as Enziheo and the little loli were about to collapse, Fire finally withdrew the aura from her body. Her body turned into a ray of red light and drilled into the divine grimoire space. Everything that had happened today had dealt her a huge blow. She needed to calm down. It's you guys. Suddenly, an arrogant voice came from the side. When Enziheo suddenly heard the voice, he was so scared that his entire body trembled. The little loli even hid behind him, revealing a pair of timid eyes. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and looked towards the direction of the voice. Immediately, he saw a young man dressed in brocade slowly walking over while being surrounded by a group of people. He raised his chin and arrogantly walked to the side of Nsiheo and the other two. You. What do you want now? Nsiheo pointed at the young man and shouted angrily, I'm warning you, don't take a single step closer to us, or else. Otherwise, what do you want? The young man laughed mockingly. Back then, you accidentally stepped on my medicinal herbs and actually escaped. You didn't expect that I would meet you here, did you? Nsiheo bit his lips. Who said that was your medicinal herb? That medicinal herb was clearly growing in the mountain, and you didn't pluck it. I don't understand this either, so I accidentally stepped on it. Besides, I was the one who crushed the medicinal herb before you discovered it. When did it become yours? That day, when he and the young miss were fleeing, they passed by a forest and accidentally trampled on a medicinal herb in the forest. It was also at that time that he met the young and energetic youth in front of him. The young man insisted that he had taken a fancy to this medicinal herb, but in the end, he was trampled on by Nsiheo and asked him to compensate him. If not for the fact that Nsiheo was more familiar with the forest and used all kinds of traps to shake him off, he and the young miss would not have been able to safely arrive at the Western Continent Academy. I don't care so much. I only know that I have my eyes on that medicinal herb, but it was trampled to pieces by you. You must compensate me. The young man laughed coldly. He looked at the little loli hiding behind Nsiheo, then looked at Yun Luofeng. A hint of greed flashed across his eyes. However, these two beauties, one big and one small, are not bad. If you keep them, I won't have to compensate you. Nsiheo was so angry that he almost punched the young man's face. He said angrily, don't even think about it. Ha! The young man laughed out loud. How dare you speak to me like this? Don't you know who my uncle is? Let me tell you, my uncle is a teacher of the academy. If you want to stay in the academy, you must listen to me. He licked his lips and turned his lecherous gaze towards Yun Luofeng. Beauties, what future do you have by following this brat? Why don't you follow me? I guarantee that you'll have a good life. My uncle is a teacher in the academy and has great authority in the academy. If you follow me, I guarantee that no one will dare to bully you. After speaking, he raised his hand to caress Yun Luofeng's face, and Nsiheo hurriedly covered the little loli's eyes. Don't look. The following scene would definitely be very bloody. Not suitable for children. Paw! A crisp sound, accompanied by a wild roar, resounded throughout the entire sky. The young man held the hand that was broken by Yun Luofeng. He was in so much pain that he broke out in cold sweat. His face had already turned ashen. Stupid girl, you actually dared to hit me. Chapter 1190. Get lost. The girl's thin lips parted, her domineering voice reverberating through the mountain range for a long time. The middle-aged man who had been dozing off on the tree was suddenly startled awake by the voice. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and looked curiously at Yun Luofeng. The elders had sent him to protect Yun Luofeng, but what was going on? Wasn't that Wang Yiji's nephew, Wang Mujing? Why was he at odds with Yun Luofeng? Just you wait. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth, glared at Yun Luofeng, then turned and fled. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, the girl in white would suddenly attack and not give him any time to react. He had his uncle's support anyway, just wait and see. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Within these 7 days, there were already people who failed and left the hidden divine mountain. Of course, there were even some who found a place to hide so that they could leave after 7 days. At this moment, in the Western Continent Academy's elders' courtyard, a few elders heard the middle-aged man's report and looked at each other, seeing the shock in each other's eyes. You're saying that Feng'er has a humanoid spiritual beast? Su Kong's eyes darkened as he asked. The middle-aged man nodded. That's right, I saw it with my own eyes. That spiritual beast is an 8-tailed fox, it's very powerful. After hearing this, the silent old man's expression finally changed. If Feng'er has a humanoid spiritual beast, there's no need to worry about her safety. Shui Ying's lips curled into a faint smile. That's right, this matter must be kept a secret. Otherwise, if the people from the Western continent hear about it, they'll definitely try to murder her. That's right, Shui Ying is right. Emptiness nodded and said, for the safety of our precious disciple, we must not spread this matter. Also, other than the humanoid beast, did anything else happen to Feng'er? The middle-aged man blushed and rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. That 8-tailed fox seems to have fallen out of love. Miss Yun has been comforting her. I felt bored so I took a nap. When I woke up, I found that Miss Yun and Wang Mujing had a conflict. Wang Mujing? Who? Ling Hai frowned. With his status, he would not remember a student's name. The middle-aged man wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Wang Mujing is Wang Yiji's nephew. Wang Yiji, who is this? Ling Hai's frown deepened. The middle-aged man was sweating more and more. Elder, Wang Yi is a teacher of the academy. An academy teacher. Ling Hai sneered, a mere nephew of an academy teacher dares to be so arrogant. How dare you bully my disciple? Having obtained such an outstanding disciple, I can't wait to hold her in the palm of my hand and keep her in my mouth. Who allowed those bastards to bully my disciple? Among the elders of the academy, Ling Hai's temper was the worst. If he really got angry, no one would be able to stop him. Elder, I didn't see what happened earlier, so I'm not sure if Miss Yun was bullied. The corners of the middle-aged man's mouth twitched slightly. However, when Wang Mujing left, I noticed that his hand seemed to be broken. On the other hand, Yun Luofeng was completely unharmed. Ling Hai glared at him. He didn't bully my disciple. Did my disciple bully him? My disciple is so obedient, how could he bully others? Besides, Wang Mujing's broken arm is definitely his own doing. Chapter 1191. In Ling Hai's eyes, Yun Luofeng was an obedient child. How could she bully others? It must have been Wang Mujing who was courting death and offended Yun Luofeng, causing her hand to be broken by the spiritual beast in her hands. The reason why Ling Hai did not think of Yun Luofeng, that was because in the test a few days ago, Yun Luofeng did not have any level. It was obvious that she had not started cultivating. The middle-aged man was sweating profusely, but in his heart, he felt sympathy for Wang Mujing. He hoped that this pair of uncle and nephew would be more tactful and not provoke Yun Luofeng. Otherwise, they would not be able to endure the anger of the elders. After the middle-aged man left, he saw Yun Luofeng, who was dressed in a snow-white dress, walk in from outside the elder's room. She raised her eyebrows, looked at the angry old fellows in front of her, and asked, "What happened? Who offended you?" Ling Hai abruptly returned to his senses. When he saw Yun Luofeng walk into the room, his originally angry face abruptly became full of smiles. Su Kong and the others looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. All these years, Ling Hai was different from them. They had all accepted many disciples, but only Ling Hai did not place any of the geniuses in his eyes. It could also be said that Yun Luofeng was the only disciple he had accepted. How could he not protect her? It's fine. Ling Hai walked to Yun Luofeng's side with a face full of smiles. His eyes were filled with satisfaction. Looks like you have successfully passed the trial. From now on, you are a disciple of our Western Continent Academy. Yun Luofeng saw that the few old men did not ask about fire, so she did not bring it up. She nodded slightly and said, "This time, I came to ask for a leave of absence. Leave? Ling Hai looked at Yun Luofeng suspiciously. You just entered the Western Continent Academy and you want to ask for leave. That's right, I still have something to take care of. At the latest, I will be back in a month. Fire's mood was very low. If she did not help her solve this matter, perhaps she would never be able to walk out of this haze. All right. Ling Hai sighed dejectedly. Then do you have anything you need my help with? I'll send a few guards to protect you. No need. Yun Luofeng smiled and shook his head. I can solve this matter myself. Masters, take care. She cupped her fists and turned to leave. Ling Hai looked at Yun Luofeng's back reluctantly. Only when her figure had completely disappeared did he withdraw his gaze. She has an 8-tailed fire fox. No one will be able to hurt her. Don't worry. Su Kong walked to Ling Hai's side, patted his shoulder, and consoled him. Even though Ling Hai was worried, he could only nod his head at this moment. I hope so. The sun was setting. The afterglow of the sunset shrouded the entire gate of the academy, emitting a dazzling radiance. Yun Luofeng walked out of the academy's main gate and saw Nziheo waiting at the entrance. He raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, Did you find out anything about the matter I asked you to investigate? Nziheo hurriedly nodded his head. I found out. That man called Jing Jiang is the young master of the City Lord's mansion. Unfortunately, the young master of the City Lord's mansion isn't strong enough. That's why he was bullied. However, the reason Jing Jiang went to the Hidden God Mountain was indeed to find the God-burying flower to save his fiancée. As he said this, Nziheo carefully glanced at Yun Luofeng and said fearfully. Chapter 1192. He could tell that the little girl in red was deeply in love with Jing Jiang, but Jing Jiang already had a fiancé, so she was destined to be sad. I will remember the help you have given me today. I will return it to you in the future. After saying this, Yun Luofeng took a step forward and was about to leave. Nziheo was stunned for a moment, then hurriedly said, Can Miss and I go with you? Hearing this, Yun Luofeng stopped in his tracks and shook his head. If you follow me, it will be even more dangerous. She didn't know how many enemies she would encounter on this continent, so she naturally wouldn't bring Nziheo and Arale along. Also, she paused for a moment, then continued, Can you get a leave of absence? Nziheo lowered his head dejectedly. No one knew what he was thinking. Turning his head to glance at Nziheo, Yun Luofeng slightly raised the corner of his mouth. Don't worry, in this academy, no one will be able to hurt you too much. Instead, if you follow me, you might even lose your life. After saying that, she turned around and disappeared into the street without looking back. Jing City. It was indeed not far from the Western Continent Academy, only half a day's journey away. At this moment, at the entrance of Jing City, the girl in white stopped in her tracks. Her fingers gently stroked her chin, slightly narrowing her eyes as she stared at the ancient city gate. Swish! Fire shot out from her body, finally transforming into a young and cute little girl, landing beside her. Her expression was very nervous, and she didn't know where to put her hands. Yun Luofeng gently held her small hand and asked, Fire, will you regret seeing him? Fire shook his head, his face resolute. Master, back then, after the divine medical grimoire left me behind, I was chased by a group of humans and was severely injured. It was his appearance that saved me, and now that I feel that he is in some trouble, I should help her. At this point, Fire's mouth had a hint of bitterness, but it was also somewhat relaxed. After I help her this time, we don't owe each other anything. They owed each other nothing. When these two words came out of Fire's mouth, it caused Yun Luofeng's heart to suddenly tremble. Fire, since he doesn't know you, then you should learn to forget about him. Alright, Fire said seriously, after I solve his problem, I will forget about him. In this life, I will never think of her again. No one knew that when Fire said these words, her heart couldn't help but ache. The beautiful images of the past kept flashing through her mind, causing tears to almost fall from the corners of her eyes. But in order not to worry Yun Luo Feng, she endured it. City Lord residence. At the main gate, 2 guards enforced the law impartially, stopping Yun Luo Feng and the other man. Up ahead is the City Lord's mansion. Unauthorized personnel, please leave immediately. Fire raised his palm-sized face and stared straight at the 2 guards with his watery eyes. I'm here for Jing Jiang. The 2 guards looked at each other, and a trace of doubt flashed through their eyes. After pondering for a while, he replied, Young master is not in the mansion, but I can inform Miss Xiao. Miss Xiao. When Fire understood who this Miss Xiao was, the guard had already entered the door to report. Not long later, he walked out and respectfully made a gesture of invitation. Miss Xiao wants you to enter. Fire tried his best to make his emotions normal, and then slowly walked into the courtyard. Chapter 1193. The house was deep. Inside the pavilion, a woman was sitting upright. Her green clothes were like muslin, and a purple belt was hanging down from her waist. She was as beautiful as a fairy. She sensed Yun Luo Feng and Yun Luo Feng walking in, and gently raised her eyes. The moment her beautiful eyes looked at Fire, a light flashed past her eyes, and her smile became even more moving. However, the woman's face was pale, and her lips were devoid of blood. She looked sickly. However, when Fire saw the lady's face, a burst of anger surged out from his body, and he gritted his teeth. Xiao Ru. It's you. It's actually you, Fire, do you know him? Yun Luo Feng lowered his eyes and asked in a deep voice. Fire was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Back then, Yi saved me and established the Yi family for me. This woman was the disciple she had taken in after establishing the Yi family. Later on, because she wanted to seduce Ah Yi, she was chased out by Ah Yi. Why is she here? If it was said that Jing Jiang didn't know her and that she was heartbroken, then Xiao Ru's appearance filled her heart with despair. How could this be? Ah Yi was clearly not such a person. Why did he choose to be with Xiao Ru after forgetting about her? Xiao Ru smiled and slowly walked forward. Her steps were brisk, and her purple belt fluttered in the wind. She was so beautiful that no one could ignore her. Fire, long time no see. Fire's eyes suddenly shrank in pain. You know me? No, that's impossible. You're just a human, you can't live for so many years, how could you still remember me? Xiao Ru laughed. I'm lucky, I accidentally learned a type of reincarnation ability. Every time I get old, I will commit suicide and find a young and beautiful woman to possess. Because of the possession, the body I snatch will gradually become my appearance. Fire, you won C's master's favor, and for your sake, he did not hesitate to give such an overbearing order to the descendants of the Yi family, and the entire Yi family will serve you for the next 1,000 years. But now, I have become his fiancé. Even if he isn't as outstanding and powerful as he used to be, it doesn't matter. I only love him as a person. I only want to become his wife, no matter how weak he is now. A smile appeared on Xiao Ru's pale face. However, I also believe that he's only temporarily weak and will grow stronger sooner or later. That's why I purposely injured myself and forced him to go to the Vault God Mountain to find the God-bearing flower. Fire's eyes were filled with anger. Do you know that with his current strength, if he were to take this kind of risk, it would be very easy for him to die. So what if I die? If he dies, I can continue to look for him. Xiao Ru smiled slightly. Fire, you can also see how well Master treats me right now. For me, he is even willing to take this kind of risk. It is not in vain that I have searched for him for 1,000 years to find his reincarnation. Fire's body trembled even more. Originally, he had already blessed Ah Yi, but who would have thought that the one who snatched Ah Yi away would be this woman? Suddenly, the smile on Xiao Ru's face changed and she sobbed uncontrollably. She covered her face with her hands and her eyes were filled with grief. Ruer, what's wrong? At first, Fire did not understand why Xiao Ru's face had suddenly changed, but at this moment, a familiar voice came from behind him. Jing Jiang quickly walked to Xiao Ru's side with a nervous expression. He looked at the crying Xiao Ru and did not know where to start. Chapter 1194. Fire's face stiffened as she clenched her hands tightly. She opened her eyes and looked at the nervous Jing Jiang, her heart aching so much that she could hardly breathe. Big brother Jing. Xiao Ru leaned on Jing Jiang's chest in grief. Did I cause trouble for you? Just now, this lady warned me that if I let you look for the god-burying flower, you would lose your life in the hidden divine mountain. I also know that the hidden divine mountain is very dangerous. If it wasn't for your good luck, you might not have been able to return alive. Jing Jiang's eyes were filled with anger. He turned around to face Yun Luofeng and Gu Lingji and said angrily, Miss, I thank you for saving my life. However, this does not mean that you can arbitrarily criticize my fiancé. For Ruer, forget about going to the hidden divine mountain to find medicinal herbs. Even if you want me to jump into the frying pan, I would be willing. What right do you have to control me? Big brother Jing, don't say any more. Xiao Ru held on to Jing Jiang's arm tightly. I know I was wrong. I won't let you take risks for me in the future. After all, there's nothing better than you being alive, big brother Jing. It's all my fault, I asked for too much. Jing Jiang's heart ached. He quickly turned around and wiped the tears from the corner of Xiao Ru's eyes. Ruer, what nonsense are you saying? For a useless person like me to have such a gentle and beautiful fiancé like you, is already a blessing that I have cultivated for several lifetimes. Xiao Ru lowered her head as tears dripped down her cheeks. However, the corner of her lips raised into a complacent smile. Fire, in your previous life, for you, Master did not hesitate to become enemies with countless experts in the world, just to protect your safety. In this life, in his heart, there is only me. What are you two still doing here? Jing Jiang raised his head and looked at Yun Luofeng and Xiao Ru unhappily. Hurry up and leave, don't disturb my fiancé anymore. Big brother Jing. Xiao Ru raised her head pitifully. Don't blame them, they are doing it for your own good. Even if it's for your own good, this red-clothed little girl asking me to leave you. What? Jing Jiang flew into a rage. He didn't have the scholarly temperament he had when they first met. His eyes were full of resentment. He looked at Fire as if he was looking at an enemy. Little girl, I've already made it clear to you before that I'm not interested in a child like you. How dare you come to Jingqing to destroy the relationship between me and my fiancé? My fiancé left me for my own good. If you really want my best, then don't appear in front of me for the rest of your lives. Fire raised his head and looked straight at Jing Jiang with his big watery eyes. Do you really believe every single word she says? If I don't believe her, should I believe you? Jing Jiang sneered. Ru-er and I have been in love for 1,000 years. Ru-er once told me that we were lovers 1,000 years ago. She searched for 1,000 years just to find me. Tell me, how can I let her down when she is so infatuated with me? Lovers of 1,000 years. Fire laughed. She looked at Xiao Ru with ridicule. How could she say something like that? Moreover, he actually believed it. Fire. Yun Luofeng lightly patted Fire's shoulder, and said in a low voice, Get out of the way. Fire was startled. She had never disobeyed Yun Luo Feng's orders. Therefore, she took a few steps back. Yun Luo Feng's steps were light, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Xiao Ru. What do you want? Jing Jiang's expression changed greatly. Just as he was about to stop Yun Luo Feng, a gust of wind suddenly blew from Yun Luo Feng's sleeve, instantly sending his body flying. Chapter 1195. Bang! Yun Luo Feng kicked Xiao Ru's body, fiercely kicking her out of the pavilion, and with a plop, she fell into the lotus pond at the side. This kick is to repay you for making fire sad. Xiao Ru struggled to climb out of the lotus pond. But at this moment, Yun Luo Feng once again appeared in front of her, pulled her out of the pond, and kicked her in the chest once again. This kick is because you framed fire. The young girl straightened her sleeves, her domineering and demonic eyes swept across the stunned people, her voice was arrogant and filled with killing intent. As long as I'm here, no one will be allowed to bully her. You! Jing Jiang's face changed greatly, he pointed at Yun Luo Feng and wanted to curse out loud. However, before he could say anything, he was interrupted by the young girl's evil voice. I don't think you are the person in Fire's heart, because Fire, he wouldn't like a man like you who doesn't know right from wrong. After saying that, Yun Luo Feng turned around and walked to Fire's side, raising his eyes to look at her. In order to repay your kindness, you want to come here and help him, but he doesn't need your help. Yun Luo Feng paused, then continued, moreover, you saved him in the Hidden God Mountain, so it can be considered as repaying your kindness. We can leave now. Fire nodded his head and followed closely behind Yun Luo Feng. Perhaps it was because her heart had truly been broken this time, so much so that she did not even look at Jing Jiang in the end. Ruer. Jing Jiang quickly rushed in front of Xiao Ru, supporting her battered and exhausted body, his face full of nervousness and worry. Are you all right? Xiao Ru's heart was filled with anger. If it was his former master, in order to save the fire, what kind of danger had he not gone through? Furthermore, he had managed to survive the pursuit of so many experts. At that time, he had said that Fire was someone he would protect with his entire life. He worked hard to break through himself and increase his strength, all in order to protect her safety. Why did he become so useless in front of her? I'm fine. Xiao Ru stood up, her slightly lowered eyes flashing with unwillingness and anger. Did she really like the current Jing Jiang? No, she had always believed that Jing Jiang would one day become that expert from 1,000 years ago. Now, she couldn't help but wonder if she was wrong. He was destined not to be the Yi clan's old ancestor who terrorized everyone. Jing Jiang looked at Xiao Ru nervously. Are you really okay? Xiao Ru shook her head and said tiredly, I'm a little tired. I'll go and rest first. Seeing that Xiao Ru was obviously unwilling to say anything more, Jing Jiang became even more anxious. I'm sorry, I'm useless. I couldn't protect you. Xiao Ru stopped in her tracks and the corners of her lips curled into a sarcastic smile. Big brother Jing, I'm a woman. I also want to be protected by my man. However, you're still so indifferent when someone treats me like that. You really disappoint me. Jing Jiang was not indifferent. He was just scared silly. In addition, Yun Luofeng's speed was too fast, so he did not have the chance to react. Then what do you want me to do for you to forgive me? It's very simple. I want you to use your own strength to recover the other families in Jing City in the next few days, and then annex the other cities. I want you to become stronger. Can you do it? Xiao Ru turned to look at Jing Jiang. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. After all, I don't want to be bullied anymore. Only when you become strong can you protect me. Chapter 1196. Jing Jiang nodded his head seriously, his eyes filled with determination. All right, I will go find those families now. If they don't agree, I will fight to the death with them. With that said, Jing Jiang took one last look at Xiao Ru, his eyes filled with determination, and turned to walk out of the courtyard. Xiao Ru stared at Jing Jiang's departing figure, the corner of her mouth raised into a smile. A person's potential is always forced out. If he were to rely on his own strength to reclaim a few families, then he would definitely encounter danger. At that time, he would be able to unleash his potential. In Jing City, the position of the city lord's mansion was no longer what it used to be, especially after Jing Jiang appeared. That was why she asked Jing Jiang to reclaim a few great families and show her some achievements. Master, don't blame me for being too ruthless. I really missed the time when you stood at the peak of the world and pointed out the right path for the world. Xiao Ru's eyes flickered. If Jing Jiang successfully recovered his former strength, then she would definitely follow him for the rest of her life. On the other hand, she didn't mind killing him herself and letting him start over. Outside the city lord's mansion, Fire's hand left Yun Luofeng's palm, his bright eyes filled with grief. Master, let's go back. You don't plan to stay any longer. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and smiled, his eyes staring deeply at Fire. Fire bit his lips. He has already forgotten about me, what's the use of me staying? Master, is it so easy to forget about the people from your previous life? Yun Luofeng muttered to himself for a moment, then suddenly raised his head, his deep black eyes staring at the azure sky, and said, if there is a next life, in the vast sea of people, as long as I meet Yun Xiao, I will recognize him with a single glance. Of all the living beings in the world, only he could give her such a strange feeling. Therefore, she only needed a single glance to recognize him. Fire lowered his head and remained silent. Suddenly, a figure hurriedly walked out of the city lord's mansion, aggressively walking towards the street. Fire was startled. Ah Yi, what is he going to do? Worried. Yun Luofeng raised his head and glanced at Fire, raising the corner of his lips. If you are worried, I can bring you to see. Fire's heart suddenly trembled. She originally wanted to turn around and leave, but unfortunately, Jing Jiang's actions just now were too abnormal, causing her to be worried. Master, I want to take a look. How could she forget her yearning for 1,000 years so easily? If it wasn't for Ah Yi, she wouldn't have been able to live to see her master. Let's go. Yun Luofeng shook his head helplessly. Even if Fire promised to forget about him, it would not be so easy to let go of him. Ling family. The two guards who were on duty were stunned when they saw Jing Jiang's aggressive aura. Young city lord, our patriarch is having tea with someone. He asked me to inform him before you enter. Jing Jiang snorted coldly. Ignoring the guard's advice, he forced his way into the house. The two guards hurriedly stopped him. Young city lord, our patriarch really has something to say. Please let us go and inform him. Get lost. Jing Jiang shouted angrily and was about to force his way through the guards. However, at this moment, Patriarch Ling, who was receiving guests in the main hall, was startled. He frowned deeply and said to the guest beside him, I'll be right back. With that, he quickly walked out of the hall. With a glance, he saw Jing Jiang who had forcefully broken through the obstruction, and a cold look flashed across his eyes. Chapter 1197. Young city lord, I wonder why you've come to my Ling family so angrily. Jing Jiang stopped, looked at Patriarch Ling, and said straightforwardly, I want your Ling family to submit to me. Patriarch Ling was stunned for a moment, then laughed out loud. Did I hear wrongly? You want me to submit to you? Ha ha ha, young city lord, we are polite to you because of the city lord. Otherwise, what qualifications do you think you have for us to treat you differently? Jing Jiang's face was filled with anger. I don't care so much, you must submit to me today. Only if you submit to me will Ruer marry me. Patriarch Ling sneered. Everyone said that the young city lord was bewitched by a fox spirit and did not hesitate to go to the burying god mountain to take the risk. You came to cause trouble for my Ling family for a woman. Have you ever thought about your own strength? You are not allowed to speak ill of Ruer. She is the best woman in the world. None of you understand her. Jing Jiang flew into a rage. He would not allow anyone to insult Xiao Ru. Ruer did not despise me for being weak and still followed me. With her beauty and ability, she could have found a better man, but she chose me. For her, not to mention the Ling family submitting, even if I were to go to hell, I would immediately jump in. Patriarch Ling said coldly, it's not that easy to make my Ling family submit. This time, you were the one who provoked us first. Even if the city lord returns, our Ling family is in the right. Men, beat this guy up for me. Yes, Patriarch. In an instant, several figures appeared out of thin air in the Ling family courtyard. Those people quickly rushed towards Jing Jiang and fiercely smashed their fists onto his body. Jing Jiang felt as if his body was being struck by a hammer. The pain was unbearable, but when he thought of Xiao Ru's expectant expression, he endured it. For Ruer, he could not give up. Bang! 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 Everyone punched and kicked Jing Jiang. Jing Jiang used his hands to protect his vital parts and clenched his teeth without making a sound. Master! Seeing that Jing Jiang was about to be beaten to death by that group of people, Fire's expression suddenly changed. Just as she was about to step forward, Yun Luofeng reached out and pulled her back. You really want to go? Even if you save him, he won't appreciate it. He might even blame you for being a busybody. Fire stopped in her tracks. She smiled bitterly and shook her head. Master, as long as I think of the days we spent together, I can't ignore it. Even if she doesn't appreciate it, or if she blames me for being nosy, I just don't want him to die, that's all. As she finished speaking, she raised her little face and strode into the house. Stop! A delicate shout sounded from within the house, causing those people to stop what they were doing and look at Fire in confusion. Why is it you again? Jing Jiang said angrily, I don't need you to meddle in other people's business. Go away. Fire did not say anything, his bright eyes looked at the Ling family head. Can you let him go? A strange light flashed across clan head Ling's eyes as his lips curled into a smile. It's not impossible to let him go. But I have a condition. What condition? I want you to be my son's child bride. TSK, it was really rare to see such a beautiful girl. His son was only 10 years old and already liked to tease maids. If he gave this girl to him, he would definitely be very happy. Chapter 1198. Fire laughed. Her smile was bright and cute, but her eyes were cold and gloomy. Do you know why I asked for your opinion? Because the one in the wrong in this matter is Jing Jiang. I don't want to do anything to you, so I asked you to let him go, but if you want me to be your son's child bride, then you have to ask your son if he has the life to enjoy it. Fire's brows were filled with a domineering aura. She lightly raised her chin and looked down at Patriarch Ling who was standing in front of her. Patriarch Ling was stunned. This girl was only 6 or 7 years old. Why did the words she said not sound like a little girl of her age? Release him immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite, Fire bellowed. Hee, Patriarch Ling regained his senses and sneered, then I would like to see how a little girl like you can be so impolite to me. Boom! Just as he finished speaking, a red light flashed, and Fire's small fist heavily struck Patriarch Ling's chest. Before Patriarch Ling could react, his body suddenly streaked across the air and smashed into a pillar at the side. Patriarch! Everyone ran to Patriarch Ling's side and hurriedly helped him up from the ground. Patriarch Ling wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his eyes darkened, and said coldly, "Damned girl, if you dare touch me, I will let you have a good time. Men, capture this girl for me." Boom! In that moment, Fire's body surged with anger, bright red flames floated around her body, domineering and ostentatious. The Ling family's guards did not dare to move forward, they could only hide far away and threaten her with the swords in their hands. What happened? An aged voice came from behind him, as if it was carrying a heavy pressure, causing one's heart to tremble uncontrollably. Yun Luofeng squinted his eyes and looked at the old man who was slowly walking out from the hole. This old man wore a loose robe, and his face was full of potholes, making him look especially terrifying. However, his aura was very terrifying, causing Yun Luofeng to frown. "Fire, come back." After feeling the threat from the old man, she shouted loudly. Fire was startled, she turned and wanted to walk towards Yun Luofeng's side, but suddenly, the old man who was slowly walking out made his move. "You've interrupted my conversation with Patriarch Ling, don't tell me you want to leave so quickly." Fire! Seeing the old man's palm grabbing towards Fire, Yun Luofeng quickly rushed towards her. Unfortunately, it was too late. The old man had already appeared behind Fire, his palm releasing a terrifying power. Boom! Just as the old man's palm was about to come into contact with the fire, the stunned Jingjiang had already exploded with a powerful force. This power was even stronger than the old man's, forcing him to take a few steps back. "You succeeded." Xiao Ru, who was hiding in the dark, was overjoyed. However, when she thought about how Jingjiang had used his power to put out the fire, she felt very unhappy. But, as long as Jingjiang could regain his former strength, everything she did was worth it. The smile on Xiao Ru's face grew wider and wider. In the end, it froze at the corner of her mouth. She rubbed her eyes in disbelief. Her eyes were filled with astonishment, and even her body began to tremble. How was this possible? Impossible. What he saw must be fake. In the courtyard. When Jingjiang saw the figure that had been separated from his body, he was completely scared silly. It was also a man dressed like a scholar. However, compared to Jingjiang, this man was gentle and refined. His sword-like eyebrows were dyed with frost, as if he could control the life and death of millions of people just by talking and laughing. Chapter 1199. His gaze was deeply fixated on Fire, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. "Fire, long time no see. It seems like you've finally found the person you've been waiting for." At this moment, Fire's face was already covered in tears. Her young and tender face was covered in tears. "Ah Yi. I finally see you again." After 1,000 years, they had met again, but in such a situation, Fire, back then, I was forced to leave you and accidentally died at the peak of the mountain. In order to preserve this soul body, I exhausted all of my strength just to see you again. If not for Jingjiang's appearance, I would not have been able to leave that place, and I would not have been able to see you. The man's gentle eyes only had the shadow of fire, and his tone was gentle. Previously, my soul body had always been living in Jingjiang's body, and I was also recovering my strength in his body, all for the sake of waiting for you to appear. I originally only wanted to take a peek at you before reincarnating, but who would have thought? Ah Yi, you bastard. Fire quickly rushed in front of the man and fiercely smashed his chest with her small fist. Her voice was hoarse as she roared, "If I wasn't in danger, would you have never shown up? You saw me being bullied, you saw me so heartbroken, and you didn't even plan to appear." No wonder he could feel Aye's aura in Jingjiang's body. It turned out that Ah Ye's soul had treated Jing Zhang's body as a house and lived inside. She had misunderstood everything. Ah Ye did not forget her, nor did he fall in love with her. She had mistaken the others for Ah Ye, Fire. The man held Fire's small fist, his voice becoming gentler and gentler. I was indeed wrong in this matter. I didn't want you to see the current me, but I didn't expect you to be so sad. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Fire's crying voice suddenly stopped. She raised her teary eyes, and the man's figure was reflected in her clear eyes. Ah Ye, I miss you. The man patted Fire's shoulder, his cold eyes sweeping across the old man. After crippling your own strength, leave this place, or else, I will kill you. The old man's expression suddenly changed. He looked at the gentle and refined man with some fear. He steeled his heart and said, "This has nothing to do with me. If you want to look for someone, look for the Ling family. I'm just passing by." Master Hui Yi, you can't do this. Ling family head's expression changed on the spot. Didn't you want to surround and kill the Ghost Emperor? Our Ling family's strength is not bad. We can definitely help you. Please save me. Ghost Emperor. Boom. Yun Luofeng's aura suddenly rose. His evil eyes stared coldly at Ling family head and asked, "Did you just say the Ghost Emperor?" Ling family head was stunned. He did not know what Yun Luofeng's words meant. The Yun Luo Feng, Yun Luo of a four of. Ling family head glanced at Yun Luo Feng. I'm not sure. It said that the Ghost Emperor always wears a mask and never shows his true appearance. Feng. Yun Luofeng's eyes narrowed slightly, and the smile on his lips revealed a cold aura. I don't care who the Ghost Emperor is. All I know is that you mentioned the name of the Ghost Emperor. They even claimed that they would surround and annihilate him. Just because of this, all of you deserve to die. She didn't know if the Ghost Emperor they were talking about was Yun Shao. Chapter 1200. However, she would rather kill 10,000 people wrongly than let go of anyone who wanted to hurt Yun Shao. Ah Ye, Fire raised his chin, if you want me to forgive you, then kill these people for me. The old man felt the rising killing intent from the man's body. He was so scared that his old face turned pale. He cried out in fear, "No, you can't, Hua." As soon as he finished speaking, the man extended his finger and gently pointed at the old man. In that instant, the old man felt a pain in his throat. Blood spurted out like a pillar of blood, instantly dyeing the entire ground red. His eyes widened, and his body fell to the ground with a thud. All right. The man turned his head, his doting gaze enveloping Fire. Are you satisfied? If you're not satisfied, feel free to speak. As long as it's your request, I will definitely satisfy it. Fire bit her lips. I want you not to leave me, can you do that? The man's expression froze for a moment, then he smiled bitterly and said, I'm already dead. I'm now a soul without flesh and blood. I need to reincarnate. No, I won't let you go. Fire anxiously looked at Yun Luo Feng. Master, you must have a way to preserve Ah Ye's soul for a long time, right? Yun Luo Feng was silent. Looking at her silent expression, Fire's heart tightened, and tears flowed uncontrollably. Silly girl. The man raised his finger and gently flicked away the tears at the corner of Fire's eyes. He smiled and said, So what if I stay? I can't take you as my wife. Fire, wait for me for another 20 years. In 20 years, I will come find you. What if you forget me after you reincarnate? Fire lowered his head and said softly. Nope. The man's eyes were filled with determination. I will forget anyone, but I will never forget you. Fire, don't be deceived in the future. Remember, the person who doesn't know you is definitely not me. You have already been engraved in my soul, how could I forget you? All right, Fire raised his bright eyes, then I'll wait for you. No matter how many years it takes, I'll wait for you. She had waited for Yun Luo Feng for thousands of years, and she had also waited for Ah Yi for thousands of years. How could she continue to wait for a few more decades? Silly girl, although you've lived for thousands of years, your body is too small. I really hope that you can grow up a little. That way, we can get married earlier. The man lovingly caressed Fire's head, leaving a deep kiss on the tip of her hair. If you really can't continue to grow, it doesn't matter. Even if I feel guilty, I will definitely marry you. Fire looked at his own young body and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, a staggering sound rushed in from outside the courtyard. Xiao Ru's face was extremely pale, and her body was trembling uncontrollably. Her eyes were filled with jealousy, and she wanted nothing more than to tear Fire into pieces. Ruer. Seeing Xiao Ru appear, Jing Jiang's heart was filled with joy. He quickly walked to her side and raised his hand to support her. Are you all right, Ru? Get lost. Xiao Ru pushed Jing Jiang away and scolded him in disgust. Don't touch me with your dirty hands. You're disgusting. Jing Jiang was stunned. He could not believe that Xiao Ru, who was as gentle as water, would say such words to him. Chapter 1201. Xiao Ru did not even look at Jing Jiang as she stared deeply at the man with her beautiful eyes. Master, she finally called out the name she had used for so many years, but her voice was trembling. Master, Jing Jiang and I are innocent. I only thought of him as you, that's why I was with him. As if struck by lightning, Jing Jiang was completely stunned. What did Ruer mean by that? All this time, she had always thought of herself as someone else. The man raised his eyes to look at Xiao Ru. His expression was not as warm as water as when he was facing the fire. His eyes were so cold that it seemed as if they had frozen into ice. I have seen everything that you have done to the fire, and only someone like Jing Jiang would believe your one-sided words. What's laughable is that you actually thought of such a stupid person as me. Master, I was wrong. Your disciple was really wrong. Xiao Ru's body trembled violently as tears streamed down her face. Such a beautiful person was crying so pitifully. It was likely that many men would be moved. Unfortunately, the man's face was already expressionless, and his expression was as cold as ice. You can go, don't appear in front of the fire again. I don't want you to disturb her. Xiao Ru's eyes turned red, and her jealousy and anger spewed out, Master, Fire is just a fox, what's so good about her? Why do you only dote on her? Bang! The man raised his hand and lifted Xiao Ru's body, causing her to fall to the ground in a sorry state. A trace of blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. She held her chest tightly with her hands as she looked at the man in despair. I've crippled your strength. Even if you continue to be reborn in the future, you won't be able to cultivate. This way, even if you take away the body of a peerless genius, you won't be able to pose any threat to the fire. Xiao Ru lowered her head, her heart trembling even more at this moment. Master was so protective of the fire, afraid that he would hurt her, he did not hesitate to cripple his own strength. Perhaps, she had been wrong from the very beginning. Back then, if she had not insulted the fire out of jealousy, her master would not have chased her away in a fit of anger. Miss, the man's gaze gradually turned to Yun Luo Feng, and a warm smile once again appeared on his handsome face. Seeing that you are so protective of fire, then I can leave in peace. With a master like you, fire is very happy. Yun Luo Feng pondered for a moment, then said, 20 years later, if you forget fire, then I will absolutely not let you off. The man smiled. I'm sorry, but you won't have the chance to let me go. As he spoke, his body began to become transparent, as if he would dissipate with a gust of wind. Ah ye! Fire anxiously raised his hand, wanting to grab the man's hand. The man also stretched out his big hand and held Fire's small hand, but just as they were about to shake hands, the man's soul completely disappeared. Fire was stunned, her hands froze in the air, staring blankly at the direction the man disappeared in, unable to even shift her gaze away. She had missed him for so many years. Now that they had finally met, they had to separate again. Fire, if you want to cry, then cry. Yun Luofeng walked to Fire's side and patted her head comfortingly. Fire's eyes turned sour, she deeply held back her tears, and her small face was filled with determination. I believe that there will be a day when we meet again. That day, it wouldn't be long before it came. Yun Luofeng squinted his eyes, his gaze sweeping towards the Ling family head. He raised his eyebrows and said, "You just said that you want to surround and kill the Ghost Emperor, then do you know where the Ghost Emperor is?" Chapter 1202. Patriarch Ling fiercely swallowed his saliva. It's Phoenix Mountain. Phoenix Mountain. Yun Luofeng retracted his gaze and said, "Fire, let's go." After saying this, she left on her own. Fire also regained his senses and hurriedly followed behind Yun Luofeng. Ruer. Jing Jiang ran in front of Xiao Ru once again. His face was pale as he said, I don't mind if you treat me as someone else. Now, can you come back to the city lord's mansion with me? Scram! Xiao Ru forcefully pushed Jing Jiang away and stood up angrily. Why do you think I approached you before? I only treated you as my master. Otherwise, with your strength and talent, how could you win my favor? Jing Jiang's face became even paler as he looked at Xiao Ru in grief. That's not what you said before. You said that you love me as a person and nothing else. Xiao Ru sneered, that's because I treated you as my master and thought that one day you would become stronger. Who would have known that you weren't him at all? You will never be able to achieve his achievements. Jing Jiang, stop dreaming. Why do you think I want you to go to the God-burying mountain? And why do you think I want you to cause trouble for the great clans? That's because I want you to break through in the face of danger. Jing Jiang's body swayed. He shook his head, not daring to believe what his ears had just heard. Ruer, you're lying to me. You're not that kind of person. You must be lying to me, lie to you. Xiao Ru laughed coldly, are you worthy? Her last three words were like the final blow to Jing Jiang. His body finally could not hold on any longer and fell to the ground with a bang. It turned out that in Xiao Ru's heart, he didn't even have the qualifications to be deceived by her. It was laughable that he had risked his life for her. Jing Jiang laughed and suddenly burst into tears. The sound of his unbridled cries shook the entire Ling residence, causing people to sympathize with him. Xiao Ru staggered towards the door, completely ignoring Jing Jiang who was behind her. Her pale face was filled with despair. Not only was she a good-for-nothing now, she would never be able to obtain her master's heart. What was the point of possessing someone else's body so many times? Why not just grow old quietly in this life, erase all her memories, and reincarnate as a human? Perhaps she wouldn't be in so much pain. At the foot of Phoenix Mountain was a simple and unadorned town. The originally quiet town was now filled with people. Hearing their conversations, one could tell that they were all here to encircle and kill the Ghost Emperor. At this time, in a corner of the town's tea house, the white-clothed girl gently took a sip of tea. She quietly listened to the noise around her, her beautiful face expressionless. It was as if she had nothing to do with it. Miss, did you come here alone to kill the Ghost Emperor? Suddenly, a voice came from the front. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at the man who spoke. The man was not polite at all. He sat down in front of Yun Luo Feng and poured himself a cup of tea. His handsome face had a handsome smile on it. Why did this ghost emperor provoke so many people? Yun Luofeng's eyes flashed as he asked, why did so many people come to encircle and kill him? This. The man rubbed the back of his head. It seems that because the ghost emperor destroyed the limitless sect, many people came to encircle and kill him. I just came to join in the fun and increase my strength. Ha! Chapter 1203. The Limitless Gate. Why would he want to destroy the Limitless Gate? Yun Luo Feng took another sip of tea and asked. The man thought for a moment before replying, I heard that on that day, a relic had been unearthed. The Ghost Emperor and a few other great forces had rushed there upon hearing the news. However, the most precious treasure in the relic, the Heavenly Spirit Mirror, had been taken by the Ghost Emperor. As a result, a few great forces had chased after him in anger. Heavenly Spirit Mirror. If Yun Luo Feng had not been sure at the beginning whether the Ghost Emperor of this mainland was Yun Shao or not, after hearing the man's words, he was 100% sure. The reason was none other than the fact that the Heavenly Spirit Mirror was still in her hands. Since the Ghost Emperor had obtained the Heavenly Spirit Mirror, it naturally belongs to him. What right does the other forces have to chase after him? Yun Luo Feng laughed coldly and said sarcastically. The man was shocked by her words. He wanted to stop her, but it was too late. In an instant, everyone in the tea house had their eyes on Yun Luo Feng's face. My apologies, the handsome man hurriedly stood up and said apologetically, my friend here doesn't know the reason behind the incident. That's why she spoke without thinking. I hope that everyone can forgive her this once. Humph. An old man from the seat in the middle of the tea house scoffed coldly and swept a cold glance at Yun Luo Feng. Young lady, you should know what you can say and what you can't. The Ghost Emperor has always been in the wrong. So what if he had obtained the Heavenly Spirit Mirror? He doesn't even know how to use the Heavenly Spirit Mirror. He's just a dog in the manger. Furthermore, the Ghost Emperor doesn't belong to the West Continent. What right does he have to take something that belongs to the West Continent? That's right, the Ghost Emperor has committed a heinous crime. Even if the great forces chased after him, he shouldn't have killed the people of the Limitless Gate. Furthermore, the people of the Limitless Gate only chased after him. They didn't kill him. What right does he have to destroy the Limitless Gate? Miss, you're speaking up for the Ghost Emperor. Are you on the Ghost Emperor's side? If you're on the Ghost Emperor's side, we'll kill you right now. The man became more and more anxious. He continuously explained things to Yun Luo Feng. Then, he faced the crowd and said apologetically, she is my junior apprentice sister. She doesn't know the Ghost Emperor. This time, she is a genius. She came here with me and didn't understand the situation. Seniors, please don't make things difficult for her. For your sake, I'll let your junior sister go for now. If there's a next time, don't blame me for being impolite. The old man snorted and said in a bad mood. In their eyes, the Ghost Emperor was the one who deserved to die. Who allowed him to take away the Celestial Spirit Mirror? The Celestial Spirit Mirror belonged to the Western Continent. As an outsider, what right did he have to take it away? Let me tell you a story. Yun Luo Feng smiled at the man sitting in front of him and said, there was once a murderer who was sentenced to death. The reason was that the murderer wanted to kill him. Out of self-defense, he accidentally killed the other party, which caused public anger. Do you know what those people said? The man blinked curiously. What do you mean? Those people said that even if the other party wanted to kill you, you shouldn't have killed him. Furthermore, you weren't killed by him, so what right did you have to kill him? So, I believe that if someone chases after you in the future, you can't fight back. You can only stand there and let them kill you. Yun Luofeng took another sip of tea and said nonchalantly. Pfft. The man spat out a mouthful of tea. If Yun Luofeng had not dodged in time, the tea would have been sprayed all over his face. In order to snatch the heavenly spirit mirror, these people had chased after Yun Shao for thousands of miles. Just based on this point, she would not let them off. However, when her words fell into Duan Yichen's ears, he thought that Yun Luofeng listened to his persuasion, and unconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. Don't try to show off in front of these people. Otherwise, these shameless old things will definitely find trouble with you. Perhaps Duan Yichen was afraid that the people from the Boundless sect would hear what he said, so he deliberately lowered his voice. Yun Luofeng turned to Duan Yichen and asked, "You also came here to encircle the Ghost Emperor?" Chapter 1206. Duan Yichen chuckled and scratched the back of his head. "I said yesterday that I came to join in on the fun. I don't care what they want to do. I only want to go to Phoenix Mountain to raise my strength." Hearing this, Yun Luofeng did not say anything else. Her fingers lightly stroked Little Tree's hair, and the murderous intent in her darkened eyes intensified. "Let's go." The old man from the Boundless sect swept his eyes over everyone present and overbearingly said, "This time, we will head to Phoenix Mountain and must kill the Ghost Emperor. We will avenge the innocent souls of the Boundless sect. Revenge, avenge the Boundless sect. Eradicate the scourge, the Ghost Emperor." Everyone raised the weapons in their hands, their loud voices echoing through the streets of the small town. Did they really come to find Yun Shao to avenge the Boundless sect? Most likely, they were only here for the Void Mirror. Duan Yichen, Yun Luofeng seemed to recall something and turned to him. "What is the Void Mirror you spoke of? You don't know about the Void Mirror?" Duan Yichen was somewhat astonished. The Void Mirror is rumored to be a treasure once owned by the strong Ling Tian. It is said that one can obtain all of Ling Tian's inheritance inside the Void Mirror. It also allows one's strength to undergo a qualitative change. Inheritance. Yun Luofeng grew silent. She pondered for a long time but did not know how to use the Void Mirror. The crowd was already heading toward Phoenix Mountain in a grandiose manner. Phoenix Mountain was not much smaller than God Burial Mountain, so it would not be that easy to find Yun Shao in such a large mountain. They spent the entire day on the road. Night fell. Everyone took out their tents and prepared to set up camp. Duan Yichen looked at the unprepared Yun Luofeng and scratched the back of his head as he asked, "Miss Yun, I have extra tents here. Do you need them?" Yun Luofeng shook her head. "No need, I'll just spend the night under the tree." "All right." Seeing Yun Luofeng's refusal, Duan Yichen did not say anything else. He glanced at the girl sitting on the tree and started setting up his tent in an open space. The flames of the bonfire were very bright, extremely bright against the girl's gorgeous face. Yun Luofeng handed Little Tree to Huohua and sat cross-legged under the tree. No one knew that at this moment, her soul had already entered the God Code space, Master. Little Tree, who was squatting in the corner and drawing circles, saw Yun Luofeng and his eyes brightened. He hastily stood up. "Master, why are you here? Xiaoimo, have you thought of how to use this Void Mirror?" Yun Luofeng lightly furrowed her brows. "Next, the enemies I need to face are too powerful. If I can form a contract with the Void Mirror now, I will have the ability to stand on their side." Xiaomo was silent. After a long time, he looked up at Yun Luofeng and said, "We've tried dripping blood to recognize its master, but it didn't work, but," he paused for a moment before continuing, "at that time, you only used ordinary blood. Now, you can try using blood essence." However, it will take a long time to replenish a single drop of blood essence. I was afraid that if you failed, it would waste your blood essence, so I didn't tell you. Treat it like a living horse. Now, I will not let go of any method that can increase my strength. Yun Luofeng slightly raised her eyes, her gaze solemn. Chapter 1207. She opened her hand, and a bronze mirror suddenly appeared in her hand. Then, she closed her eyes and pointed her finger at the celestial spirit mirror. Spiritual energy surged out of her body and gathered on her finger. A drop of bright red blood was gradually forced out of the gap between her fingers by the surging spiritual energy. With a plop, it fell into the celestial spirit mirror, whoosh. In an instant, the white light intensified. The dazzling light enveloped the entire space of the divine grimoire and also blinded Yun Luofeng's eyes. Within the white light, she could faintly see a man walking towards her. The man's entire body was shrouded in white mist so that his face could not be seen clearly. Only a cold and unique voice rang out within the white light. Do you see the wind around you? Within the white space, countless swift and fierce winds rushed about chaotically and blew against her body. Her skin immediately split open, a bright red wound and fresh blood flowed out. Defeat it. If you defeat it, you can leave this place. If you can't, then you will be controlled here for the rest of your life. Yun Luofeng's expression suddenly changed greatly. Senior Ling Tian, I still have matters to attend to and must leave this place. Can you wait until I'm done before defeating the wind here? What answered her was silence. The white-robed man had already disappeared long ago. Only the surrounding wind brushed against her face and brought about a wave of pain. Seeing another gust of wind coming towards her, Yun Luofeng leaned to the side and narrowly dodged it. She hurriedly took out her long sword and fought against the wind in front of her with an anxious expression. However, the more anxious she was, the more mistakes she made. In a short while, her body was already riddled with wounds. Her snow-white dress was stained with fresh blood, turning it a bloody red. Even Yun Luofeng did not know how much time had passed. The surrounding wind became more and more violent and there was no end to it. As time passed, Yun Luofeng became even more anxious. She only wanted to defeat the wind as quickly as possible. No, I can't continue like this. Yun Xiao is still waiting for me outside. I need to calm myself down and find the weakness of the wind. Yun Luofeng took a deep breath and slowly closed her eyes. Since the wind made her eyes blurry, she might as well use her ears to listen and determine their direction. The sound of the wind whistling was so clear that it made Yun Luofeng's mood even calmer. Finally, she sensed a faint breeze. As she was enveloped by the strong wind, she suddenly opened her eyes and slashed out a sword light in that direction. Puchi! The sword light broke through the layers of obstacles and hit the target. At this moment, all the wind in the surroundings dissipated and the entire space became quiet. The sword in Yun Luofeng's hand was pressed tightly against the ground. Sweat and blood mixed together, making her look rather wretched. Is that enough? Can you let me out now? Yun Luofeng asked as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. The previous test was to let you understand the importance of calming your mind during battle. The white-robed man appeared in front of Yun Luofeng once again. His slender finger pointed behind Yun Luofeng. There are thousands of soldiers there. Defeat them. Yun Luofeng's expression changed. I said I want to go out. What answered her was still silence. Yun Luofeng could only resign himself to his fate and turn around to fight with the army. Even in this celestial spirit mirror, there were still changes between day and night. As she watched the constantly changing days and nights, Yun Luofeng's heart had already calmed down from its initial anxiousness. Chapter 1208. She could feel the passage of time. She also knew that she had been in the celestial spirit mirror for a month. Her top priority now was to quickly complete the task that the white-robed man had given her. Only then would she be able to leave and see Yun Xiao. Hence, there was nothing else on her mind at this moment. All she could think about was completing the task with all her might. However, the white-robed man seemed to have a bone to pick with her. After dealing with the army, he had given her one task after another. No matter how Yun Luofeng questioned him, the white-robed man did not say a word. Time had passed. Just as Yun Luofeng was so tired that she almost fell to the ground, the man's white robes appeared before her once again. You've completed the last task. From now on, this celestial spirit mirror belongs to you. The man slowly walked towards Yun Luofeng's side and gently tapped the young girl's forehead with his finger. As a reward for completing the task, I have a gift for you. In an instant, a powerful energy surged into Yun Luofeng's mind. Her head felt as if it was about to explode and it was filled to the brim. This is my lifetime's worth of cultivation and battle experience. Now, I'm giving it all to you. I hope that you will become a legend of the new generation. Yun Luofeng's entire body trembled as she felt countless pieces of knowledge flowing through her mind. At the same time, the spiritual energy in her body churned continuously, absorbing all the spiritual energy from the outside world into her body. Boom! The burst of spiritual energy gave her a brand new feeling of comfort. However, this spiritual energy did not disappear after her breakthrough and continued to enter her body. A mid-stage Holy Spirit cultivator, a high-level Holy Spirit cultivator, the surging energy only stopped when she reached the high-level Holy Spirit cultivator. Yun Luofeng knelt down in the direction of the white-robed man and kowtowed a few times. She then rose to her feet and quickly headed towards the outside world. This white-robed man had imparted his lifetime's worth of experience to her so he could be considered as her master. It was only right for her to kowtow to her master. Remember, this celestial spirit mirror can protect your life when you're in danger. You must never hand it over to anyone. You must remember this, you must remember this. The man's voice seemed to pierce through the clouds and echoed from a faraway place, causing Yun Luofeng to quicken her pace. Feng Huang Mountain. Yun Luofeng slowly opened his eyes and saw a familiar face. Duan Chen was delighted and hurriedly said, "Miss Yun, you're awake." Hearing this, Yun Luofeng hurriedly stood up and said anxiously, "Where are the others? I've been asleep for 3 months. Could it be that they've already?" 3 months. Duan Chen looked at Yun Luofeng strangely. "If you can sleep for 3 months, I'll admire you. However, your sleep was really long. You slept for 3 days straight." 3 days. Yun Luofeng paused. She clearly remembered that she stayed in the celestial spirit mirror for 3 months. Why did Duan Chen say it was only 3 days? Fire, on the other hand, was not anxious at all. She, who had once felt pity for Yun Luofeng, naturally knew that within these 3 days, Yun Luofeng would not be in any danger. Not good. Yun Luofeng's expression changed. They should be surrounding the Ghost Emperor by now. Duan Chen, take me to them immediately. Yun Xiao, wait for me. No matter what, this time, I will fight shoulder to shoulder with you. All right, Duan Chen nodded. Let's go. Chapter 1209. At the peak of Feng Huang Mountain. The man stood with his hands behind his back and his black robes fluttered in the wind. He sensed the footsteps behind him but did not turn around. His silver mask reflected a dazzling light under the sunlight. Ghost Emperor, we've finally found you. The elder from the Boundless sect panted as he stepped forward and glared angrily at the man. He gritted his teeth and said, "Keep running if you can." You've killed so many people from the Boundless sect and even destroyed the entire Limitless sect. It's time for me to settle this score with you. The man slowly turned around and stared coldly at the crowd in front of him with his deep, black eyes. At this moment, his aura surged out. It was cold and murderous. He was so powerful that he was like a king who had descended upon the world, looking down on all living beings. Scram! His thin lips parted and his hoarse and deep voice reverberated in everyone's hearts. This man had always been this powerful and cold. He had never placed anyone in his eyes. Yet, it was this man who made everyone gnash their teeth in hatred and want nothing more than to kill him. Ghost Emperor, hand over the celestial spirit mirror and I'll spare your life. The elder from the Boundless sect's eyes darkened as he said eerily. The man's cold gaze slowly landed on the elder from the Boundless sect. For some reason, the elder felt his heart tremble the moment he met the man's black eyes. It was as if a hand was strangling his neck fiercely, making it extremely difficult for him to breathe. Let's attack together and kill the Ghost Emperor. The elder from the Boundless sect waved his hand and said with a gloomy look in his eyes, no matter how powerful he is, he's only one person. There are so many of us, why should we be afraid of him? 2 fists were no match for 4 legs. No matter how powerful the Ghost Emperor was, he could not possibly be a match for so many of them. Whoosh! After the immeasurable sect elder had spoken, the experts behind him all surged towards Yun Shao and surrounded him in the middle. However, no one dared to act rashly. They were afraid of the man's cold and murderous aura and did not dare to take the lead. They were afraid that they would be reduced to nothing by the man's murderous aura. In the past, if they had heard someone say that a truly powerful cultivator could kill people with murderous aura alone, they would have laughed out loud. But now, from the Ghost Emperor's body, they felt a killing intent that was enough to take a life. This man was so powerful that just by standing beside him, one would feel a sense of oppression, and even breathing would become difficult. The wind howled as the man's black robe fluttered in the wind. The mask on his face reflected a cold light, and his aura was cold. His black eyes were like a deep pool, so deep that it made one's hair stand on end. Seeing that no one dared to act rashly, the old man from the immeasurable sect gritted his teeth and charged towards Yun Luofeng. In an instant, a rainbow-like aura erupted and blasted towards Yun Shao with an unbreakable aura. Bang! Yun Shao gently raised his hand and grabbed the old man's fist tightly. A powerful wind wave spread out from the two of them and raised a cloud of dust which flew in the wind. The old man tried to withdraw his fist with all his might, but he found that his fist seemed to be deeply immobilized. No matter how much strength he exerted, his fist did not move an inch. He was greatly shocked and quickly raised his head to look at the man standing in front of him. He could not help but take a deep breath. Yun Shao, I never thought that your power would increase again in such a short period of time. But so what? It's not just the Boundless sect who have come today, there are other powerful cultivators from the West Continent as well. You're destined to not escape this calamity, haha. Chapter 12:10. He laughed maniacally. His maniacal laughter echoed throughout the entire mountain peak. Boom! The man's power penetrated his body and he was sent flying. The spiritual energy in his chest surged wildly, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Go, kill him. The other cultivators looked at each other. Perhaps the Boundless sect's elders' actions had given them courage, they all attacked Yun Shao in an instant. Facing the whirlwind of attacks, Yun Shao's aura did not change. His deep, abyss-like eyes became even colder. It was so cold that it made one's heart instantly fall into the deepest depths of hell. Fresh blood spread from the foot of the mountain peak. Even the sunset glow on the horizon was like fresh blood, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The man's black robe had long been dyed red with fresh blood. The light on his mask became even colder. This time, there were tens of thousands of people who had come on this expedition. Other than the Boundless sect and the other major forces, there were also people who claimed to be righteous. They only had one goal, and that was to kill the Ghost Emperor. In the West Continent, the relationship between the major forces was very complicated. All kinds of open and secret struggles were normal. However, no matter how they fought internally, they were united against external enemies. The Ghost Emperor had not offended them, but he had destroyed the Limitless sect. He had destroyed the powerful Limitless sect just like that. This man was too terrifying. In order to prevent their own forces from being massacred by this man in the future, they could only join forces and kill him. The more the man killed, the colder he became. In this world, only Yun Luo Feng could move him. The others were divided into 3 types. The first type were people Yun Luo Feng loved. The second type were strangers. And the third type were these enemies in front of him. Why should he be merciful to his enemies? He would kill those who should be killed and destroy those who should be destroyed. He would never be merciful. We can't go on like this. The Boundless sect elder wiped the blood and sweat from his forehead. A cold light flashed in his eyes. We don't have enough people. With the Ghost Emperor's power, we will all die in his hands sooner or later. So, Lady Zillian, please. A purple-clothed woman slowly walked out from that group of people. This woman could be considered beautiful, provided that there were no scars on her face. TSK, although I can't see the Ghost Emperor's face, but his figure is not bad. It would be a pity to kill him. The woman in purple licked her lips and narrowed her eyes with greed. Do we really have to kill him? It would be great if he could become my pet boy to warm my bed. The corners of the Boundless sect's old man's mouth twitched violently. Although Violet Lotus looked like a young woman in her 20s, in reality, she was already over 50 years old. However, the cultivation method she practiced was rather special, which was why she could maintain such a youthful appearance. It was also because of her special cultivation method that she needed to harvest yang to nourish her yin. Any man that she fancied would not be able to escape her clutches. The purple-robed woman's fingers gently stroked her lips as the desire in her eyes grew stronger and stronger. Compared to looks, she preferred a man with a perfect body. Based on this man's figure, his skills in bed must be pretty good. It would be a pity to kill him. She had yet to properly enjoy this man's power. Lady Zillian, said the Boundless sect elder helplessly. The Ghost Emperor is not someone who can be easily controlled. If you want to obtain him, you will definitely suffer the consequences of your own actions. Hence, we can only ask you to help us kill him. Chapter 12:11. Zillian smiled delicately. I'm just joking. I don't know what's more important. Even if it's a pity, I'll still kill him. With Zillian's assurance, the elder from the Boundless sect smiled. The reason why they dared to seek revenge on the Ghost Emperor on Feng Huang Mountain was because of Zillian's trump card. Zillian was no match for the Ghost Emperor in terms of strength. Unfortunately, Zillian's true strength did not lie in her own strength. Suddenly, Zillian flipped her palm and a jade flute appeared in her palm. The jade flute glowed like a piece of jade. It was so beautiful that no one could look away. A beast-taming flute. The crowd was shocked when they saw the jade flute. The elder from the Boundless sect called her Lady Zillian. Could she be the sect leader of the beast-taming sect, Qin Zillian? If Zillian called herself the second best beast-taming expert in the world, then no one would dare to call themselves the first. In the 7 continents, no one would be a match for Zillian. The beast-taming sect. The beast-taming sect from the central continent. Oh my God, the elder from the Boundless sect actually invited a strong cultivator from the central continent. The crowd, who had been filled with despair, was filled with joy when they saw Zillion. As long as Zillion made her move, there was no doubt about this battle. Just as everyone was discussing, Zillion had already placed the jade flute to her lips. A beautiful melody flowed from her lips and slowly flowed through the silent mountain peak. The cries of hundreds of beasts. At this moment, all the spiritual beasts on Feng Huang Mountain roared as if in response to Zillion's call. In the western continent, Feng Huang Mountain was the most dangerous place after Hidden God Mountain. Of course, compared to the crazy spiritual beasts on God-Burying Mountain, the spiritual beasts on Feng Huang Mountain rarely attacked humans. Unless humans provoked them first, or robbed them of the medicinal herbs they were guarding. However, now that they heard Zillion's call, the spiritual beasts rushed over. Countless birds circled in the sky and let out crisp cries. Perhaps all the spiritual beasts on Feng Huang Mountain were rushing over, at the foot of the mountain. The sound of galloping could be heard from behind. It came from afar and quickly arrived behind Yun Luofeng and the others. The moment Duan Chen turned around, he saw this shocking scene. He hurriedly said, "Miss Yun, be careful." Yun Luofeng frowned slightly. Before she could understand what was happening, the spiritual beasts had already passed by them and were quickly making their way towards the top of the mountain. "You scared me to death." Duan Chen wiped the sweat off his forehead and exhaled softly. "I thought that the spiritual beasts on Feng Huang Mountain had gone mad." In an instant, Yun Luofeng seemed to have realized something. Her beautiful face suddenly darkened. Not good. After saying that, she turned into a ray of light and dashed forward in the blink of an eye. "Master, wait for me." In his anxiety, Fire shouted out these two words without hesitation. At the same time, her figure also turned into a beam of light and quickly disappeared. "Master." Duan Chen was stunned. Isn't this little girl Miss Yun's younger sister? Why was he calling her master? Also, this little girl seems to be only about 6 years old. She's so fast that even I can't catch up. After thinking for a long time, Duan Chen still could not understand this logic. Afraid that something would happen to Yun Luofeng, he hurriedly chased after the two of them. The mountain peak towered into the clouds and white mist swirled about. Chapter 12:12. Countless spiritual beasts kicked up a cloud of dust as their horses galloped. The eyes of the spiritual beasts were filled with savagery as they charged towards Yun Shao under Zelia's command. At that moment, the entire mountain peak was filled with all sorts of birds, beasts, and powerful human cultivators. Below them was a group of spiritual beasts that were running non-stop. From afar, it was a spectacular sight. It just so happened that the only person standing opposite of these people was a callous man. He was facing so many enemies on his own, yet he showed no fear. Yun Shao. However, at that moment, a familiar voice rang out in front of him, causing the man's body to stiffen. His gaze, which had landed on the group of spiritual beasts, slowly shifted away. His eyes, which were as deep as a serene lake, stared at the woman in white who was rushing towards him from the foot of the mountain. His gaze, which was like a 10,000-year-old iceberg, melted the moment he saw the young girl. Within his deep and serene black eyes, only the young girl's silhouette could be seen clearly. It grew larger and larger, closer and closer. One glance was enough to last a lifetime. At that moment, the man forgot about the clamor around him and the spiritual beasts charging towards him. In his entire world, there was only her left. Yun Shao. Yun Luofeng's peerlessly beautiful face changed when he saw the spiritual beasts charging towards Yun Shao. His voice carried a sense of urgency. Fortunately, Yun Shao returned to her senses at the last moment. With a loud crash, the spiritual beast at the very front collapsed under Yun Zhao's power. It bled from its 7 orifices and its bones were shattered. At this moment, Yun Luofeng had already made his way through the group of spiritual beasts and reached Yun Zhao's side. When the two of them looked at each other, they only had eyes for each other. "You've come." The man gently opened his mouth and his hoarse voice rang out in the noisy battlefield. "Yes, I've come." After being separated for so many months, she had finally come. "I've come to follow in your footsteps and become a woman who can fight by your side. I've been waiting for you." He had been waiting for her. Waiting for her to come to this mainland. However, he never thought that she would arrive so quickly. It had exceeded his expectations. Seeing that the other spiritual beasts were about to pounce on her, Yun Zhao waved his hand once again and several beams of energy shot out at the same time. Before the spiritual beasts could dodge, they collapsed into a pool of blood. "Great, so you really are in cahoots with the Ghost Emperor." The instant the boundless sex-old man saw Yun Luofeng, he understood something and flew into a great rage as he said, "No wonder you would speak up for him. Turns out that the two of you are actually a pair of adulterous dogs." Yun Zhao's brows furrowed as he stared coldly at the immeasurable sect elder. His aura spread out, covering the sky and earth. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of her lips as she stood next to Yun Zhao. An evil smile hung on her face as her eyes, which were as calm as an ancient well, turned towards the boundless sect elder. "That's right, the Ghost Emperor is my man. Since I'm here today, I want to see who dares to touch my man." His white robe fluttered in the strong wind. The young girl raised her eyebrows. Her domineering voice reverberated throughout the entire mountain peak. At this moment, fire had already rushed to Yun Luofeng's side. She was still hugging the small tree in her hands, and her eyes were filled with anger as she coldly stared at the crowd in front of her. Zilian had already stopped playing her flute. Because of this, the spiritual beasts that were attacking Yun Zhao stopped as they looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know why they were in this place. Yun Zhao stood quietly beside Yun Luofeng. Although he didn't need her protection with his strength. But he just liked to see her domineering appearance when she stood up for him. Chapter 12-13. She couldn't get enough of this look. Rumor has it that the Ghost Emperor is cruel and merciless, bloody and murderous. I've always wanted to know what kind of person the woman who could subdue the Ghost Emperor is. Zelia narrowed her eyes, a smile on her lips. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. "Now that you've seen it, how do you feel?" "That's all." Zelia's smile was filled with disdain, as if she didn't care about Yun Luofeng at all. He was just a holy spirit. To an ordinary person, a holy spirit was powerful enough. But in front of her, it was nothing. "You old witch, what nonsense are you spouting?" Fire glared at Zelia angrily. "You're just an old witch in her 60s or 70s, how dare you look down on my master?" Zelia's eyes turned cold. This little girl could tell her age. What made her even angrier was that she had insulted her as an old witch. However, after seeing Yun Luofeng at the side, Zelia suppressed her anger. The smile on her face didn't weaken at all. TSK, little girl, I'm afraid your body won't be able to withstand the torment of the Ghost Emperor. How about I take your place?" Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes. If she still couldn't feel Zelia's longing for Yun Zhao, then she would have lived 2 lives in vain. "Leave it to me." Yun Zhao lowered her eyes and whispered into Yun Luofeng's ear. "Yun Zhao, I've come here to fight alongside you, not to rely on your protection." Yun Luofeng turned to the man beside him. "So, I'll leave the humans to you, the spiritual beasts. I'll deal with them." Yun Zhao did not hesitate and nodded, "All right." He believed in Yun Luofeng. Since she had made such a request, then she would definitely do it. Humph. Zelia scoffed coldly, the smile on her lips curling into a mocking arc, clearly not taking Yun Luofeng seriously at all. The tune she played was not as beautiful as before, instead, it became extremely sharp, like a sharp sword piercing through the intestines, killing without leaving a trace. Roar! Countless birds and beasts seemed to have gone mad, their eyes turning blood-red as they charged towards Yun Luofeng. In an instant, dust flew and covered the entire mountain peak. Yun Shao quickly finished them off. I can stop these spiritual beasts. Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened as he spoke. All right. Yun Shao glanced at Yun Luofeng, then turned his cold eyes towards the crowd in the sky. His robes fluttered in the wind, giving off an austere aura. Quick! Quick, protect Miss Zelian. The expression of the old man from the Boundless sect changed drastically as he hurriedly instructed. In an instant, everyone surrounded Violet Lotus, protecting her in the middle so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Yun Zhao's aura was too terrifying and his cold eyes were filled with killing intent. Just meeting his gaze would make one tremble in fear. Go! An expert gritted his teeth and took the lead to charge towards Yun Zhao. At the same time, the others also launched their attacks. Killing sounds could be heard from the blood-stained mountain peak once again. Countless spirit beasts swarmed towards Yun Luofeng with their sharp claws and fangs. Anyone could foresee that under the onslaught of so many ferocious spiritual beasts, Yun Luofeng would not even have a corpse left. Ghost Emperor. Zelia gently narrowed her eyes and her smile was ambiguous. A jade flute spun around her fingertips, causing her to pause for a moment. Her tongue licked her lips, displaying her full charm. I really can't help but admire your foresight. You found such a weak woman. She will soon die under the claws and fangs of the spiritual beasts and your fate will be just as miserable. Of course, if you're willing to be my man, perhaps I can spare your life. Chapter 12-14. Lady Zelian. The old man's expression changed as he said, You can't be serious, right? Zelian didn't even look at the old man. Her smile was seductive as she looked straight at Yun Shao. How is it? Isn't this condition very beneficial to you? No matter what, with my beauty, you won't lose out. To be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to see what kind of person the Ghost Emperor was, I would have rejected the Boundless sect's invitation. You should feel honored. Shameless. Fire sneered as he looked at Zelian. His soft voice carried a hint of disdain. You think you can be considered beautiful? Even one of my master's toes is better than yours. Indeed, even though this Violet Lotus was beautiful, she had a scar on her face. This scar destroyed her beauty. However, what Zelian hated the most in her life was people insulting her for being ugly. You're courting death. Her eyes turned cold as she once again placed the jade flute to her lips. The slowed-down spiritual beasts once again sped up and quickly arrived in front of Yun Luofeng and Fire. At this moment, no one saw that the fat baby in Fire's arms was not crying because of the spiritual beasts. Instead, he started giggling. His fair and tender little arms waved in the air, and a bright smile appeared on that young and tender little face. The fat baby's smile was as if he had obtained a new toy. He was very happy. Xiao Shu, you stay here. I want to fight side by side with Master. Fire threw the small tree on the ground and walked in front of Yun Luofeng. She raised her chin and looked down at the spiritual beasts that were rushing towards her. Do you think a bunch of small animals like you can hurt my master? Now, I will show you who is the true king of spiritual beasts. Hua! Flames ignited from Fire's body, and countless flames covered the entire sky, making the mountain peak look completely red. 8 tails appeared behind her. These 8 tails represented the source of her power. Thus, people could feel the surging power in her body. It was so strong that it was unparalleled. Among spiritual beasts with high bloodlines could suppress ordinary spiritual beasts. Even though the spirit beasts were under Violet Lotus's control, they were still stunned, and fear could be seen in their eyes. Unfortunately, Violet Lotus immediately controlled their consciousness and ordered them to rush towards Yunluo Feng. Just as Duani Chen ran towards the mountain peak, he saw Fire, who was enveloped in flames, especially the 8 fiery red tails behind Fire, which were clearly reflected in his eyes, scaring him so much that he almost fainted on the spot. During this period of time, the little girl who had been with him day and night was actually the spirit beast. What could be more shocking than this? Fortunately, he did not do anything to anger Yunluo Feng and Fire. Otherwise, who knew if this spiritual beast would flip out on the spot and kill him? The more Duani Chen thought about it, the more relieved he felt. But even so, he could not calm the shock in his heart. On the battlefield, the girl's white clothes were stained with blood, and her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. She held a long sword in her hand, and her evil eyes were filled with killing intent. Blood splashed out from the body of the spiritual beast and splashed onto her face. However, she seemed to have made up her mind and continued to charge forward. Zi Lian's face darkened. In her eyes, Yunluo Feng should have been buried in the horde of spiritual beasts in the next second. She didn't know that she could actually use her left arm to carve out a path of blood for herself. No, if this goes on, we won't be a match for them either. We have to get rid of these people as soon as possible. Chapter 12-15. Zi Lian looked at the jade flute that was getting closer and closer to her, and a look of anxiety finally flashed across her eyes. Suddenly, her gaze landed on the small tree that Fire had thrown onto the ground, and a hint of joy flashed across her eyes. At this moment, Zillian had never thought about why Fire would be at ease and throw the small tree on the ground. She had never thought that the small tree, who was clearly a child, would not only not cry or make a fuss in the face of such a scene, but would instead be giggling non-stop. It was precisely because she did not think much that she did something that she regretted bitterly. Zillian once again played the jade flute. This time, the direction of the jade flute was no longer pointed at Yunluo Feng. Her sharp gaze swept across the small tree that was crawling on the ground, and the corners of her lips curled into a cruel smile. "Miss Yun, be careful of your child." Duani Chen shouted loudly, his eyes flashing with anxiety. He had arrived late and did not know what had happened. He only knew that Yunluo Feng had started fighting with these people. But these people did not even want to let her child go. Yunluo Feng did not seem to hear Duani Chen's words. He continued to deal with the enemy in front of him, completely unworried about the safety of the small tree. Cluck, cluck, cluck. The small tree waved its white and tender arms, giggling as it waved at the spirit beasts that were pouncing towards it. Its cute little face was brimming with a bright smile. Roar! A male lion pounced in front of the small tree, opened its bloody mouth wide, and bit down on the small tree's fleshy arm. "It's over." Duani Chen hurriedly covered his eyes. He could not bear to see the tragic scene of the small tree being bitten to death by the spirit beasts. But in the end, he could not help but open a crack. The expected scene did not appear. The small tree was not torn apart by the spirit beasts, but it suddenly disappeared. When he was looking for the small tree in surprise, he suddenly realized that the little fellow that had been crawling on the ground just now had unknowingly sat on the head of the lion. Because the lion's fur was too exuberant, it covered the small tree's body, so he did not notice it at first. It was only when a fleshy arm stretched out from the thick fur that he discovered the existence of the small tree. In the entire mountain, other than the roars of the spirit beasts, there were no other sounds of humans. Zillion was stunned. She stared at the small tree with her mouth agape. She fiercely rubbed her eyes, not daring to believe what she was seeing. How is this possible? He's just a kid. Zelia's face was pale, and even her voice was trembling. Everything in front of her was beyond her imagination. She had lived for decades, but she had never seen such a supernatural scene. The image of the sapling riding on the lion's back fell into everyone's eyes. It was as if they saw a mouse standing on a cat's paw, kikik. The little tree's crisp laughter was so obvious and deafening amidst the roars of the spirit beasts. Roar! The male lion flew into a rage and violently swung the small tree's body, trying to shake it off its head. Xiao Shu's laughter disappeared. His eyebrows were tightly knitted, and his expression did not look too good. He was angry. Once the sapling grew, the consequences would be dire. He staggered up from the lion's head and angrily slapped the lion's head with his little hand. As the lion's fur was too thick, he could not feel the little palm of the little tree, but the others were shocked by the sapling's behavior. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. A little boy who had not even grown all his teeth dared to ride on the lion's back and even hit it. She regretted it. He regretted dealing with Yun Xiao. This man was not someone they could deal with at all. Lord Yun Xiao, Fire winked at Yun Xiao, leave the people here to me. I guarantee that I will complete the mission with the small tree and not leave a single one of them alive. You and Master can go to the world of two people. She was determined to be a spiritual beast that shared her master's worries. Now that her master and Yun Xiao had not seen each other for so long, they definitely needed to be alone. As for the aftermath, it was enough for her to do it. Yun Xiao walked towards Yun Luofeng. When he saw the small tree giggling at the side, he was unable to shift his gaze away. He is our son. Don't blame Yun Xiao for misunderstanding Yun Luofeng. Even though this small tree was only a few months old, he could still see his own shadow on him. Especially his eyebrows, they were extremely similar. Chapter 12-17. So, he concluded that Xiao Shu was his and Yun Luofeng's child. Yun Luofeng's expression darkened. How long have we been apart? Yun Xiao thought about it. More than half a year. How long does pregnancy take? 10 months, Yun Luofeng smiled. Then do you think he's our son? Yun Xiao was silent for a moment. Then who is he? What do you think? Yun Luofeng raised his brows. He looks so much like you. Then what do you think his identity is? Hearing this, Yun Xiao immediately became nervous. He stared at Yun Luofeng uneasily. I have nothing to do with him. All these years, I've been by your side. Apart from you, I've never interacted with anyone else, and my first woman was also you. Feng you have to believe me. I really have nothing to do with him. Duan Yichen was just about to walk towards Yun Luofeng when he heard their conversation. His mouth twitched and he looked at Yun Xiao speechlessly. The rumored ghost emperor was naturally an idiot. Let's go. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and pulled on Yun Zhao's clothes. I'll settle things with you when we get back. Feng you really have to believe me. I don't know him. Yun Xiao was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. He was afraid that Yun Luofeng would misunderstand him. Yun Luofeng glanced at him. I adopted Xiao Shu. As for his identity, I'll tell you later. Right now, I want you to settle the score. You faced so many dangers alone. Why didn't you tell me everything? Why didn't you let Qin Yuan tell me? Yun Xiao froze. His black eyes stared at Yun Luofeng. His voice was hoarse and low. I was afraid you'd be worried, so I want to settle things with you first. Yun Luofeng glared at him. Fine. If it can appease your anger, you can punish me however you want. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. A dangerous arc flashed across his eyes. Then let's settle things in bed now. Settle things in bed. Duan Yichen was confused. This was the first time he saw someone settle things in bed. Miss Yun was indeed different from ordinary women. Domineering and shameless. From afar, he could vaguely hear the conversation between the two men. I'll go up, you go down. This was an evil voice, incomparably tyrannical. All right. The voice was filled with doting and indulgence. I'll make sure you can't get out of bed for 3 days and 3 nights. Don't worry. With my physique, even if it's 3 months, I can still get out of bed. Duan Yichen almost fell to the ground. Miss Yun's domineering attitude was a little too much, right? He actually said that he would make the Ghost Emperor unable to get out of bed for 3 days. However, the Ghost Emperor was very tolerant and indulgent towards her. He could see that the man spoiled her to the bone and allowed her to do whatever she wanted. Duan Yichen's heart ached. It was rare for him to fall in love with a woman at first sight. Unfortunately, this woman already had a husband. Her husband was so outstanding that no one could compare to him. Then what hope did he have? Duan Yichen sighed. Right now, he could only give Yun Luofeng his most sincere blessings. Run! The experts who had come to encircle Yun Xiao turned around and fled when they saw the two of them leave. Fire's sharp eyes glanced at the movements of those people, and scolded sternly, if you want to escape, you have to see if you have the ability to do so. Xiao Shu, these people want to kill your parents. How do you plan to punish them? Xiao Shu was not an ordinary human. He had evolved from a tree. Although he had only been born for a few months, his mind was already like that of a child. Chapter 12:18. Kill. Hearing Fire's words, Xiao Shu turned his head to look at the people who had turned around and left, and a soft voice came out from his mouth. Yes. Those who bullied their parents deserve to die. Bang! Once again, countless vines rose from the ground. Without waiting for those people to escape, the vines had already bound their bodies, preventing them from moving. Xiao Shu, beat them to death. Oh right, don't beat that woman blowing the flute to death. Your father said that he would sell her to a brothel. Doesn't she like to please men? Then let her do as she wishes. Fire placed his hands on his hips and gave the order. The fat baby raised his small hand, and countless vine whips appeared in front of those people. Then, under their terrified gazes, the whips fiercely lashed out. Paw paw paw. Within the entire mountain peak, only the sound of the whip slicing through the air and the heart-wrenching roars of those people could be heard. Just you wait, there are many people who want to kill the Ghost Emperor. One day, he will die in the hands of a righteous man, ha ha ha. The old man from the Boundless sect laughed crazily. His eyes glowed with a blood-red light, and he had already fallen into a state of madness. The more he scolded, the faster the whip struck, until the old man from the Boundless sect was unable to say a single word. Oh, I almost forgot. Fire narrowed his eyes, and shot a dangerous gaze towards Duan Yichen. You are also in cahoots with them, here to subdue Lord Yun Xiao. Duan Yichen's forehead was drenched in sweat, and he laughed embarrassedly. I'm just here to join in the fun, it has nothing to do with me, you can continue. Fire stroked his chin, and slightly raised his head. Seeing that your nature is not bad, I will spare you. but you are not allowed to speak of what happened today. Alright, I promise I won't say anything. Duan Chen hurriedly nodded and swore. No, Fire shook his head, I don't trust you. If you reveal my and the little tree's identity, Master and Lord Yun Shao will be hunted down by even more people, so take this pill. Duan Chen was startled, looking at the pill that Fire handed over to him. He frowned slightly. What is this? This pill will make you forget what happened in the past few days. Forget what happened in the past few days. That also meant, he would forget Yun Luofeng. For some reason, when Duan Chen heard this, his heart throbbed violently. He raised his hand, but he couldn't bring himself to take the pill. I promised not to tell anyone, is that really not okay? He raised his head, looked at Fire and said. Fire blinked his eyes, we have not known each other for long, I do not know your identity, nor do I know your character, how can I trust you? Duan Chen laughed bitterly, he picked up the pill that Fire handed over and gently closed his eyes. Since that was the case, these few days of interaction were just a dream. Now that he had woken up from his dream, he should have forgotten about it. Duan Chen closed his eyes and swallowed the pill. Suddenly, he felt his body convulse. His consciousness became blurry and he gradually fell to the ground. Looking at Duan Chen's fallen body, Fire pursed his lips and asked, Xiao Shu, am I too cruel? The small tree tilted its head and blinked its big eyes curiously, as if it did not understand what Fire meant. Actually, Duan Chen is not a bad person. Although he also came to encircle and annihilate Lord Yun Shao, he has taken good care of us along the way. During the 3 days that Master was unconscious, he also took good care of me. However, in my heart, the most important thing is Master. As long as it is for Master, I can do anything cruel. Chapter 12-19. Fire's eyes gradually turned from hesitation to determination. I can't let anyone discover our identities, otherwise, it will bring danger to Master, so letting Duan Chen lose his memories for the past few days is the best decision. What's more, this guy has ulterior motives towards Master. I don't want Master to have any more dealings with him. If he forgets Master, he will definitely not pester her. The small tree looked at Fire in confusion, its big watery eyes filled with doubt. Forget it, you're still young, you don't understand the matters of your parents. Fire lowered his head and gently caressed the head of the small tree, but I know the pain of losing a loved one, so I have to protect their safety even if I have to spend my entire life. I won't let them separate. The small tree raised its chubby arm and placed it on Fire's arm, as if it was comforting her. Fire laughed, little tree, don't let Master know about this matter, otherwise, little Mo and I will be finished. If Xiao Mo hadn't secretly passed her the pill, she would have been dead. She couldn't make Duan Chen lose his memories, therefore, once Yun Luofeng found out, it would also affect little Mo. The small tree nodded sensibly and said in a childish voice, all right. Kill all of these people. Don't waste any more time. After we kill them, we'll go find Master. Fire raised his head, his eyes filled with flames as he looked at the shouting people, his body surging with killing intent. Puchi. As soon as she finished speaking, the vines turned into sharp thorns and pierced into the chests of those people. Blood seeped out from his chest and dyed his clothes red. With a wave of the small tree's hand, all the vines were retracted. The corpses of those people fell from the sky and piled up into a mountain. Although Fire had killed a lot of people in this life, and even the small tree was stained with blood for the first time, they were not bloodthirsty people. The spiritual beasts were all used, and killing people was not their intention. If not for Zilien's jade flute, they would not have been able to control themselves and attack Yun Luofeng. Therefore, after the small tree whipped them 100 times, it put them down. You can leave now. Fire placed his hands on his hips and arrogantly raised his chin. This matter is not your fault, so I will not kill you. That 100 lashes just now is your punishment. I hope that you will not encounter such a thing again in the future. Roar! All the beasts roared, looked at Fire gratefully, and quickly ran down the mountain. Let's go. Fire bent down, picked up the small tree, and walked down the mountain. Not long after they left, Duani Chen opened his eyes in a daze. He rubbed his aching forehead and frowned. What happened? Am I not here to join in the fun with those people who came to encircle the Ghost Emperor? Why am I here? He had obviously not woken up yet, but when he saw the mountain of corpses, he was obviously shocked. These are the experts from the major forces. What exactly happened? How come I don't remember anything? His head ached, and he staggered to his feet. No, this place is not safe. I have to leave as soon as possible. It was night. The moonlight was like water. In the inn at the foot of Phoenix Mountain, two bodies were entangled on a large bed. Sweat flowed down their bodies. Yun Luofeng lay on the bed, his hand caressing the man's handsome face as he narrowed his eyes. Yun Shao, I've said it before, I'm up, you're down. Chapter 12:20. Yun Shao lowered his head and gently kissed the young girl's lips. His magnetic voice was filled with affection. I don't want you to be tired. Yun Luofeng gently closed her eyes. As Yun Shao moved, she felt a wave of spirit energy continuously flowing through her body, converging into a stream. Even though she did not continue to break through, it made the spiritual energy in her body more stable. This is the benefit of dual cultivation. Yun Luofeng, who had enjoyed the benefits, had a faint smile on her lips. She hugged Yun Shao with both arms and moved her body forward. 3 days and 3 nights. None of them left the room, as if they wanted to vent all their yearning for the past few days. Fire and the small tree also waited outside the room for the entire night. They wanted to return to the divine grimoire space, but they were too embarrassed to go in and disturb Yun Luofeng. Originally, Fire thought that the battle of 3 days and 3 nights would definitely cause Yun Shao to collapse. However, when she saw Yun Shao again, it was as if nothing had happened to this man. Not only did he not show any signs of weakness, he was even more energetic than before. Of course, Fire did not know that because of their physiques, when Yun Luofeng was enjoying the benefits, Yun Shao was also sharing the benefits. It was just that he did not realize it himself. Even without the nourishment of spiritual energy, with Yun Shao's current strength, even if he fought for another 300 rounds, he would not be weak. Otherwise, why would the women beside the strong be so nourished that their faces were flushed red? It was precisely because the stronger one was, the stronger one's physique would be. Not to mention not getting out of bed for 3 days and 3 nights, even if it was another 3 days, nothing would happen. Master, shouldn't we set off? Fire looked at Yun Luofeng, who was being hugged by Yun Shao, and the smile on his face carried a hint of ambiguity. I know that the two of you have reunited after a long time, so you must be warm again. However, you have already stayed in bed for 3 days and 3 nights, so you should consider the feelings of us single people. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and smiled lightly. Fire, you and the small tree go to the divine grimoire space and wait for me. After saying this, Yun Luofeng recalled them back to the divine grimoire space and turned to look at Yun Shao. If you have anything you want to ask, you can ask it now. Just who is it? Yun Shao pondered for a moment before asking. The person he was asking was naturally the small tree. I once nurtured a child from a seed I obtained in Yellow Spring City. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of his lips. Back then, not long after you left, he was already born. Because his initial appearance was based on my ideas, I made him look like you. Yun Shao lowered his eyes and stared deeply at the young girl's beautiful face. His gaze was filled with endless yearning. Feng, I'm honored that I was the first person you thought of when you helped him design his appearance. Yun Luofeng smiled. Yun Shao, in this world, only you can make me worry so much. Ever since she had arrived on this mainland, Yun Shao had always been by her side. He had even willingly concealed all his brilliance for her. How fortunate was she to be able to obtain his favor. Let's go. It's almost time for me to ask for leave. I should return to the Western Continent Academy. I'll go with you. Yun Shao gently wrapped her arms around Yun Luofeng's waist. She lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. From now on, wherever you go, I will follow you. Wasn't there a saying that went, if you marry a chicken, follow the chicken, and if you marry a dog, follow the dog? He had chosen to become a member of the Yun family, so he would follow her wherever she went. Chapter 12:21. Yun Shao, you mean? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes, the smile on his lips filled with malice. You want to marry me? Yun Zhao's gaze was fixed on Yun Luofeng. You don't want to take responsibility. I will definitely take responsibility for you. Yun Luofeng stood on his tiptoes and kissed Yun Zhao's lips. After we've dealt with the enemies here, we'll go home and get married. Feeling the warmth on her lips, Yun Shao raised his hand and hugged the young girl's body tightly. That action seemed to melt her into his bones and blood. Inseparable for life. After the kiss, Yun Luofeng's hand landed on Yun Zhao's chest and gently pushed him away. Yun Shao, during the time I wasn't here, you've attracted a lot of peach blossoms, especially that girl in purple who played the flute. I won't have peach blossoms. Yun Shao raised his eyes and stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng was stunned and raised his head to look at the handsome and cold man in front of him. The man's voice was filled with killing intent, because, I will break all the flowers. Peach blossoms. Just break them. He had never been someone who had tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex, so what if he broke those peach blossoms? Then what about me? Yun Luofeng looked at the man with a smile that wasn't a smile and asked. The man's expression was only serious when he was facing her. You're not a flower. Then what am I? You are. Yun Shao pulled Yun Luofeng's hand and pressed it tightly against his chest. You are this. Yun Luofeng's hand felt the man's beating heart in his chest, causing her heart to skip a beat. You are my heart. If you're not here, then my heart won't be here either. Yun Shao stared at Yun Luofeng seriously and attentively. If someone else had said this, Yun Luofeng would definitely have thought of it as flowery words. But the person who said this was Yun Shao. It was the Yun Shao who never lied, nor did she know how to use flowery words. Every word he said came from the bottom of his heart and expressed his true feelings. How could she not believe this kind of man? Yun Shao. Yun Luofeng withdrew her hand. She touched her burning cheeks and turned her head to the other side. Let's go. All right. Yun Zhao's gaze continued to follow Yun Luofeng. Within his deep black eyes, that figure was exceptionally clear. West Continent College. In the classroom, the middle-aged man's cold gaze swept over the many students below. His expression was very ugly. Yun Luofeng hasn't arrived yet. The little loli furrowed her brows. She opened her mouth to speak, but when Nziheo saw this, he hurriedly pulled on her sleeve. Miss, just bear with it. Wang Yizhi is like the sun at high noon. He's not easy to deal with. Little Loli said unhappily, but she offended Wang Mujing in order to save us. Her voice was very soft, so soft that it was almost inaudible. However, Nziheo's ears were sharp enough to hear the little Loli's murmur. That day, after Yun Luofeng left the academy, the few old men in the elders' assembly did not want Wang Mujing's uncle, Wang Yizhi, to have any contact with Yun Luofeng. They had specially arranged for him to take care of other disciples, but they had not expected that Wang Yizhi would bribe the protector of the elders' assembly and transfer him to Yun Luofeng's academy. In addition, during this period of time, the elders had been busy with other matters, so no one had discovered this. However, when Wang Yizhi had confidently come to avenge his nephew, he suddenly realized that Yun Luofeng had not come to the academy. Moreover, he had been gone for more than half a month. Chapter 12:22. The rage in Wang Yizhi's heart grew as he thought of his nephew's miserable state of being bullied by her. His face darkened the entire day, causing all the students in the hall to be on tenterhooks. When Yun Luofeng arrives, get him to come see me. Wang Yizhi scoffed coldly and turned to walk out of the hall. No matter how long Yun Luofeng runs away, there will come a day when he returns. When that time comes, he will make her pay a painful price. In Academy City, the streets were bustling with people and carriages. Yun Luofeng held the back of her head with both hands and narrowed her eyes. The corners of her lips curled into an evil smile. Her black eyes were incomparably deep as she stared deeply at the street in front of her. Yun Xiao, do you plan to come with me to the academy or stay here? Yun Xiao paused in her footsteps and turned her eyes towards the young girl beside her. After a moment of silence, she said, I have no interest in the academy, so I'll wait for you here. All right, Yun Luofeng put down her hand, her slightly raised brows full of smiles, then let's go take a look at the house first and settle down here. Now that you're here, I won't stay in the academy in the future. Honestly speaking, the cultivation rooms in the academy were not very attractive to her. What she needed was the fruit of the soul. If not for that, she would not have stayed in the academy. Master, why don't you ask Yun Xiao to help you get the fruit of the soul? Little Mo's puzzled voice sounded from within her soul. With Yun Xiao's power, as long as Yun Luofeng asked, he could do it. But Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a shallow smile. Firstly, I don't know where the fruit of the soul is for now. Secondly, I don't want to fall out with West Continent Academy. After all, those cheap masters have been very good to me and I don't want to hurt their hearts. Thirdly. She paused and continued, I won't ask for Yun Xiao's help for things that I can do with my own power, even if he's my man. Little Mo fell silent. He had followed Yun Luofeng for 2 lifetimes and naturally understood Yun Luofeng's character. If she could complete a task by herself, she would never ask for help from others. Furthermore, if the Western Continent Academy had betrayed her, even if she had to forcefully seize it, she would snatch the soul fruit. It was precisely because the few elders in the Western Continent Academy treated her well that if she had any other way, she would definitely not shed all pretense of cordiality with them. Master, Little Mo sighed, no matter what you do, I will accompany you. Yun Luofeng lowered his eyes and smiled, thank you, Little Mo. The young girl's voice warmed Little Mo's heart. At that moment, he clearly understood that he was willing to do anything for her. After a while, Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao found a house and bought it at a very reasonable price. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into an angle as she stared at the fresh and elegant courtyard in front of her. She lowered her eyes and a faint luster appeared on her beautiful face. Yun Xiao, from today onwards, this place will be our temporary home. No matter how busy she was in the academy, she knew that in this house, there was a man who had always been waiting for her. Hearing the young girl's words, Yun Xiao hugged her waist from behind and used his chin to rub against her head. A low and hoarse voice sounded in her ear. Chapter 12:23. I'll wait for you here. Yun Luofeng's heart skipped a beat. She turned around and looked at the man standing in front of her. Yun Xiao, should we hire some maids and cooks? No need. Yun Xiao shook her head and smiled. I'm enough. We don't need extra people to disturb our lives. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng's smile grew. I've been away from the academy for about half a month. I'll be going to the academy later. This place isn't very far from the academy. Yun Xiao pondered for a moment before continuing, so, if you're in any danger, I can rush over to save you. He indulged her in everything. But that didn't mean that he was willing to put her in danger. As long as she was in any danger, he would rush over without a care for anything else, fire, small tree, little mo. As soon as Yun Luofeng's voice fell, a few figures appeared beside her. She continued, during this time, I'll give you your freedom. I won't let you stay in the divine grimoire space. You can come and go as you please. Master, I love you too much. Little Mo's eyes lit up. He excitedly rushed towards Yun Luofeng. He pouted his lips and planned to kiss Yun Luofeng's cheek. Unfortunately, before he could reach Yun Luofeng's side, a large hand grabbed him from behind and pulled him away from Yun Luofeng. He needs to be disciplined. Yun Zhao's low voice rang out as his cold eyes stared warningly at Xiao Mo who was in his hands. For the first time, little Mo regretted facilitating Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao. Because this man was a complete vinegar jar. Even he was not allowed to get close to his master. What made little Mo despair was that Yun Luofeng only glanced at him and said, do whatever you want. Master. Seeing that Yun Luofeng was about to leave, little Mo cried out in panic, you can't value a lover over a friend. We've been friends for 2 lifetimes. How can you abandon me? No matter how little Mo screamed, Yun Luofeng didn't stop and left the courtyard. 2 lines of tears of despair flowed down little Mo's cheeks. He cried miserably, you're a woman who values a lover over a friend. His cries passed through the walls of the courtyard and permeated outside the house. If it was an ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't meddle in other people's business. However, there were always those who thought they were in the right and stood up to criticize the other party. Just as Yun Xiao was about to turn around and leave with Xiao Mo, an angry shout came from outside the door, even if the child did something wrong, you can't hit him like this. Look at how pitiful this child is crying, how can you bear to treat him like this? Are you still his father? Yun Zhao's cold eyes swept towards the meddlesome woman standing outside the main door as his handsome face grew increasingly solemn. Yun Xiao, who was with Yun Luofeng, never wore that mask. Hence, at this moment, his handsome and grim features were clearly seen by the woman. A stunned look flashed across the woman's eyes. A complicated and regretful expression appeared on her beautiful face. What she felt complicated was that such a handsome man would treat a child so harshly. It was a pity that such a peerless man was already married and had a child. Scram! The man did not say anything else, but that one word shook the woman's heart. She felt as if all her internal organs had been shaken and turned numb. Don't you think that you've done something wrong? The beautiful woman asked righteously. He's only a child. How could you mistreat him like this? Chapter 12:24. As she spoke, the woman's leg was about to cross the threshold. A murderous intent flashed across Yun Zhao's eyes. If you dare to take another step through the door, I'll cut it off immediately. The man's cold and murderous voice caused the woman's body to tremble and she subconsciously retracted her leg. This man's aura is too strong, so strong that perhaps even Master is not as strong as him. The beautiful woman frowned. Your child is crying so pitifully, could it be that you have the heart to do so? Bang! The man waved his sleeves and a wave of energy shot out, sending the woman's body flying violently. At the same time, he slammed the door shut, locking the beautiful woman outside. Senior Sister Mingqi. When they saw the beautiful woman fall, the crowd behind her reacted and hurriedly helped her up. Senior Sister Mingqi, are you all right? The beautiful woman broke away from the crowd support and a strange light flashed across her beautiful eyes. I'm fine, I just saw an injustice. Unfortunately, I'm not strong enough and I can't save that child. Now, I can only drop the matter. Senior Sister Mingqi, this isn't your fault, it's the parents who are inhumane, they're actually abusing their child. Everyone spoke up for the injustice. Hearing these people's words, the beautiful woman felt a little better. I don't think this man is a bad person. In comparison, the child's mother is definitely not a good person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have abandoned the child and left a man to face a child. At this moment, the beautiful woman's mind was already filled with the scene of abandonment. Her heart unconsciously sympathized with Yun Zhao and she was no longer as angry as before. In her eyes, this man must have been abandoned by his wife, which was why he had flown into a rage out of humiliation and vented his anger on the child. The poor child was abandoned by his irresponsible mother and abused by his father. If she was the child's mother, she would never abandon such a delicate and jade-carved boy. Let's go back to the academy first. Yao Mingqi's eyes were filled with pity. She took one last look at the tightly shut door before turning around and leading a group of people back to the academy. In the courtyard, Xiao Imo had already shut his mouth. The corners of his eyes were still glistening with tears as he carefully looked at Yun Zhao. Did I get into trouble? He only wanted to lament and complain to keep Yun Luofeng here. Who would have thought that a meddlesome woman would jump out? Her master's man was so outstanding, what if other women took a fancy to him? The more little Imo thought about it, the more he regretted it. If he had known this would happen, he would have obediently accepted the discipline. Yun Zhao's eyes were cold and his face was expressionless. An ant can't stir up a storm. In other words, he didn't care about that woman's strength. If she dared to come forward and pester him, he would definitely break her mercilessly. Little Imo let out a sigh of relief. He was very confident in Yun Zhao. This man only had his master in his eyes and in his heart. If there were really women who were to send themselves to his doorstep, he would be the first to not let them off. Just as Yun Luofeng stepped through the gates of the academy, he noticed some people's cautious and furtive gazes. Their eyes were filled with sympathy and pity. When they saw Yun Luofeng's gaze, they hurriedly looked away and pretended as if nothing had happened. Yun Luofeng frowned slightly. He did not know what had happened. But when she found her school, she understood why those people were looking at her with such a gaze. Chapter 12:25. Yun Luofeng. Wang Yizhi was teaching students when he suddenly noticed Yun Luofeng at the door. He flew into a rage. You've been absent for so many days and you still dare to come to the academy. Who gave you the courage to not come to the academy for half a month? Yun Luofeng's evil eyes glanced at Wang Yizhi. I've asked for leave, don't you know? Actually, this matter was to be blamed on the void. He had originally arranged for someone else to manage the Soul Teacher Hall, so he sent someone to pass Yun Luofeng's letter to that teacher. Who knew that Wang Yizhi would bribe him and switch him over? That teacher was so busy that he forgot about this matter, so Wang Yizhi didn't even know that Yun Luofeng had handed over the letter. What letter? I didn't receive it. Wang Yizhi snorted, you've been absent for more than half a month. According to the rules, you'll be expelled from the academy. However, I can give you a chance. I'll whip you 100 times. Hua! Nciheo hurriedly stood up. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. Miss Yun is a girl and has a weaker physique. I'm willing to take the punishment for her. After all, Yun Luofeng had offended Wang Yizhi and his nephew because of them. He should take the punishment for her. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to take the punishment for her? Wang Yizhi sneered and said disdainfully, today, I'm going to teach Yun Luofeng a lesson. If anyone dares to plead for her, I'll expel him from the academy. Nciheo wanted to say something, but he suddenly received a signal from Yun Luofeng. This caused him to swallow the words that were on the tip of his tongue. His brows were filled with worry. Expel me from the academy. I'm afraid you don't have that right. The girl's voice was cold and heartless. Her slightly raised brows were domineering and extremely arrogant. In this academy, you're the first person who dares to speak to me like this. Wang Yizhi sneered. His slightly narrowed eyes flashed with a fierce light, so, I'll let you know the consequences of disobeying a teacher. Boom! Enraged, Wang Yizhi unleashed the pressure from his body and launched an attack on Yun Luofeng. His gaze was extremely sharp, like a sharp sword that could kill without leaving a trace. Miss Yun. Nciheo was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. However, he could only watch helplessly as Wang Yizhi charged towards Yun Luofeng. Just as the slap was about to land on the young girl's forehead, the young girl finally moved. Bang! She took 2 steps to the side and tightly grasped Wang Yizhi's palm. Under everyone's shocked gaze, she suddenly pulled back her hand, and Wang Yizhi's body was smashed to the ground in front of everyone. I told you, I've asked for leave before. Wang Yizhi's fall wasn't light. He stood up with his hands on his waist and angrily glared at Yun Luofeng. You dare to hit me? Good, very good. Since you even dare to beat me up, then don't even think about staying here. I will definitely expel you from the academy. Yun Luofeng didn't look at him anymore. He turned around and walked in the direction of the cultivation room. She had originally thought that the teachers of the Western Continent Academy were very strong, but now, it seemed that they were only a so-so. Rather than wasting time here, he might as well cultivate on his own. Yun Luofeng. Wang Yizhi roared angrily. His roar reverberated through the entire academy and lingered for a long time. The disciples in the Soul Teacher Hall were all stunned. No one thought that Yun Luofeng would dare to treat Wang Yizhi like this. After all, Wang Yizhi was also a teacher of the academy. Chapter 12:26. Moments later, the entire academy was in an uproar. It was said that the disciple who entered the academy today had actually beaten up Wang Yizhi. Even the number 1 disciple on the heaven list did not have such guts in the past. It seemed that this year, the West Continent Academy was destined to not be peaceful. In the West Continent Academy, there was a clear hierarchy. Other than the elusive dean, the elders were the most respected, followed by the hall masters. The academy was divided into a few halls, namely the Morning Hall, Medical Hall, Beast Taming Hall, and Steward Hall. The first 3 halls corresponded to the subjects that the students studied. Similarly, once one reached the Earth list, one had the right to enter the various halls and did not need to stay in the academy to continue studying. As for the Steward Hall, as the name suggested, it was used to punish disciples who made mistakes. It could be said that the Steward Hall's hall master had the highest authority in the 4 halls. Of course, if a student wanted to be above the hall masters, they had to enter the heaven list. Only the people on the heaven list had a status below the elders. Under the hall master were the teachers of the various academies. These teachers did not have a high status in the academy, but they had the right to control the academy's disciples. At this moment, in the Steward Hall, the various hall masters gathered and looked coldly at the crying Wang Yizhi. Hall master, this disciple called Yun Luofeng is too much. He completely does not know how to respect his teachers. Our academy cannot allow such a student to stay. Wang Yizhi cried with snot and tears, his eyes filled with grievance, as if he had really been bullied by Yun Luofeng. The Steward Hall's hall master frowned. According to what you said, Yun Luofeng is indeed too much. He, the morning hall's hall master smiled faintly, his fingers stroking his beard, and said, I think that Wang Yizhi did not know right from wrong and punished his disciple. As far as I know, Yun Luofeng did indeed submit a leave letter. As for who approved it, I do not know. Humph. So what if he has a leave letter? Even if he has taken leave, he cannot do anything to a teacher. Our academy cannot accept such a disciple. I think that Yun Luofeng should be kicked out of the academy. The one who said this was the medical hall's hall master. His expression was very ugly, and his tone was stern. This old antique valued respecting teachers the most. How could he allow a disciple like Yun Luofeng to exist? So what if Wang Yizhi was wrong? If the teacher judged her to be wrong, then she was wrong. As a student, she could only swallow the bitter pill. Who allowed her to lay her hands on her teacher? We don't know how to decide on this matter. Why don't we wait for the elders to finish their tasks before reporting to the elders and letting them make a decision? The beast-taming hall's hall master frowned and suggested. The elder is very busy right now. How can we bother him over such a small matter? The medical hall master sneered. Yun Luofeng doesn't respect his teacher. He should be expelled. A sinister glint flashed across Wang Yizhi's eyes when he heard the medical hall master's words. Yun Luofeng, you're still a little too inexperienced to fight me. How about this? The hall leader of the morning hall stood up, the corners of his lips curled into a small smile. If Yun Luofeng can charge into the earth ranking within 5 days, he will have the right to join any of the halls. At that time, his status will be more noble than Wang Yizhi's. Beating him up won't be a big deal. What do you all think? Within 5 days. The hall master of the medical hall laughed out loud. All right, I'll give him this chance. Chapter 12:27. Enter the Earth list in 5 days. That was impossible. The medical hall master snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and quickly walked out of the duty hall. The others also dispersed when they saw him leave. This is as far as I can help her. The hall master of the morning hall laughed. His aged eyes were filled with happiness. He quickly walked out and disappeared under the sunlight in the courtyard. In the cultivation room. Yun Luofeng had just stepped into the room when a knock came from the door. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Come in." As soon as she finished speaking, the door was pushed open and an old man dressed in navy blue robes walked in. "What's the matter?" Yun Luofeng looked at the old man who had entered the room and raised her eyebrows. "Yun girl, I have come to find you for something." The old man smiled. "Right, I haven't introduced myself." I am the Hall Master of the Morning Hall, Mu Ran. Hall Master of the Morning Hall. After entering the academy, Yun Luo Feng had learned about the division of power in the academy. So, when she heard that the person in front of her was the Hall Master of the Morning Hall, she could not help but frown. She did not understand the other's background. You hit Wang Yizhi? Mu Ran asked straightforwardly. Yun Luo Feng laughed arrogantly. He deserves a beating. Mu Ran immediately fell silent. This girl was just like what that person had said. She was arrogant and wild, but she didn't make people feel disgusted by her. Girl, you've caused trouble this time. Wang Yizhi has reported this to the duty hall and wants to kick you out of the academy. Fortunately, I have fought for an opportunity for you. As long as you enter the Earth list in 5 days, this punishment will be lifted. Yun Luo Feng raised her eyebrows and looked at Mu Ran. You can be sure that I can enter the Earth list in 5 days. Mu Ran laughed involuntarily. If it was someone else, they might not have this ability. But if it was you, can you do it? Why? Also, why are you helping me? Because I owe someone a favor. Mu Ran smiled as she looked at Yun Luo Feng. I promised him that I would take care of you after you came here. Yun Luo Feng fell silent. She really could not think of who was helping her behind the scenes. So she asked, who do you owe? Chen Yuqing. Chen Yuqing. Yun Luo Feng was startled and a trace of helplessness flashed across her lowered eyes. So, Chen Yuqing had been helping her behind the scenes. Girl, you only have 5 days. This is all I can help you with. If you can't enter the Earth list, I won't be able to protect you. Mu Ran stood up, the smile on his face unchanged. Now I won't disturb your cultivation. As he finished speaking, he turned and walked out, closing Yun Luo Feng's door on the way. 5 days. Yun Luo Feng gently stroked his chin. 5 days is enough. At this time, she did not choose to look for her cheap masters. Because, such a small matter did not require the help of others. She could totally rely on her own strength to stay in the academy. At this thought, she stood up and walked out. In the Western Continent Academy, there was a special competition arena, and disciples were not allowed to fight in private. At this moment, the arena was bustling with noise, and it was as lively as a market. However, when Yun Luo Feng stepped into the martial arts arena, the entire arena quietened down. It's her? I think she's called Yun Luo Feng. Yes, she's the Yun Luo Feng who dared to injure Wang Yizhi. I heard that the Steward's Hall has set a rule for Yun Luo Feng. If she can enter the Earth list within 5 days, her punishment will be waived. Otherwise, she will be expelled from the academy. Chapter 12:28. 5 days. TSK, how's that possible in 5 days? The disciples who can enter the Earth list are all venerable ones. Even the last one is a beginner venerable one. Every one of them is more powerful than Wang Yizhi. I really don't know where she gets her confidence to come here. If I were her, I'd pack up and get lost. That's better than embarrassing myself here. The crowd discussed among themselves as they watched the young lady walk toward the ring. Their eyes were filled with mockery and mockery. At that moment, 2 young men were flattering each other around the ring. They did not even notice Yun Luo Feng, who was walking toward them. Brother Hu, congratulations. You've finally entered the 20th place on the Earth list, unlike me, who's still hovering around the 50th place. You're flattering me. I was just lucky. Brother Lin, you're younger than me. In a few years, you'll definitely surpass me. The young man, who was addressed as Brother Lin, wanted to flatter Hu Xiong again, but his line of sight was blocked. He was stunned. When he looked up, he saw a young lady in white standing in front of him. The 20th place on the Earth list. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and curled his lips into a faint smile. I want to challenge you. The young lady's devilish voice reverberated in the crowd. It was deafening, and everyone was dumbfounded. What? Is she really going to challenge the Earth list? Why did she not choose Lin Xiong, who's ranked 50th, but Hu Lin, who's ranked 20th? You want to challenge me? Hu Lin pointed at himself in disbelief. Young lady, I don't have a sense of propriety when I fight. If I'm not careful, I'll break someone's limbs. Are you sure you want to challenge me with your skinny arms and legs? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows. That's right, I want to challenge you. After confirming the answer from the young lady, Hu Lin could not help but burst out laughing. Since you want to challenge me, I'll grant your wish. Come, let's fight in the ring. Hu Lin had broken through to the advanced venerable realm. Therefore, he was confident that Yun Luofeng was no match for him. Under everyone's gaze, Yun Luofeng and Hu Lin had already walked into the arena. I'll let you make 3 moves first. Hu Lin pointed 3 fingers at Yun Luofeng disdainfully, his face full of ridicule and contempt. Yun Luofeng's devilish eyes swept over him, but he didn't stand on ceremony. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Hu Lin. Hu Lin's expression suddenly changed, and cold sweat flowed down his forehead. He hurriedly raised his hand to meet Yun Luofeng's attack. Boom! With a loud bang, Hu Lin's body was sent flying out of the arena. Silence, the entire martial arena was deathly silent. The people who had been clamoring were dumbfounded by Yun Luofeng's actions. They stared dumbfoundedly at the young girl with her right hand behind her back. Cough cough. Hu Lin coughed dryly and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Yun Luofeng with an ugly expression. You're a Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, these 3 words caused a commotion in the crowd. Even in the 7 continents where Holy Spirit practitioners could be found everywhere, reaching the Holy Spirit realm at such a young age would still shock everyone. Yes. Yun Luofeng nodded gently in response to Hu Lin's confusion. In the beginning, she hadn't wanted to reveal her abilities, as she was afraid that her motive for coming would be discovered. However, she had now thought it through. The more she hid, the more people would bully her. Hence, why would she continue to hide her abilities? Fuck! Hu Lin cursed. You're a Holy Spirit, yet you're challenging a venerable realm like me. Don't you have any shame? There are so many people on the Earth list. Why did you challenge me instead of the others? Chapter 1229. Hu Lin felt very wronged. He was only a venerable spiritualist. The difference in strength was huge, but Yun Luofeng just had to find him. How could he not feel wronged? Yun Luofeng shrugged. Here, I only heard your ranking. I don't know what the others are ranked. Are you going to challenge the 50th place next to me? Hu Lin's voice suddenly disappeared. He did not know what to say. He deserved to be unlucky. Wasn't he just chatting with someone? Why did he have to encounter such a thing? Brother Hu. Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, Lin Xiong's entire body trembled. He smiled awkwardly and said, This matter has nothing to do with me. Who told you to rank higher than me? If she doesn't look for you, does she want to look for me? I'm only a beginner venerable spiritualist. Hu Lin glared at Lin Xiong angrily. He crawled up from the ground and snorted. I'm unlucky. Thinking about how arrogant he looked earlier, Hu Lin wanted to find a hole to hide in. Make way, make way. At this moment, a familiar voice came from the back of the crowd. And Zihao squeezed through the crowd with great difficulty and saw Hu Lin glaring at Yun Luofeng. His expression instantly changed, and he looked anxious. However, Hu Lin did not say anything in the end. He turned around and walked out of the crowd. And Zihao hurried to Yun Luofeng's side and asked anxiously, Miss Yun, how did you offend Hu Lin? Yun Luofeng's gaze fell on Zihao. Why? This Hu Lin's younger brother is ranked 10th on the heaven list. And Zihao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. You actually offended him. You're finished. There were only 10 disciples on the heaven list, but each of them was an elite. Even the person ranked 10th had strength surpassing a Holy Spirit. Above a Holy Spirit, there were a few levels. They were Holy King, Holy Venerate, and Holy Lord. Each level was the same as before. It was also divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. However, only Holy Kings were qualified to enter the heaven list. Therefore, the geniuses on the heaven list were all exceptionally talented. I'm tired. Yun Luofeng yawned and said lazily, I'll go back and rest first. Miss Yun. Seeing Yun Luofeng turn around and walk out the door, and Zihao hurriedly chased after him. His expression was so anxious that his face had changed color. He was afraid that the genius on the heaven ranking would come looking for Yun Luofeng to settle the score. Heaven Series Cultivation Room. On the exquisite and luxurious bed, the man's enchanting and peerless figure was leaning on the chaise longue. His pair of seductive fox-like eyes shone with a shrewd and cunning light. You said that my big brother was defeated by a little girl. His voice rang out lazily and a smile appeared on his peerless face. If Ji Zhoutian's charm was only on the surface, it was more overbearing and arrogant. This man, on the other hand, was charming to the bone. Every frown and smile of his was extremely charming, like a peerless beauty, so beautiful that it made one forget to breathe. Senior brother Hu Lin was indeed defeated by a new little girl. That little girl even injured Wang Yizhi in front of everyone. This girl is quite interesting. My big brother isn't strong, but he's an advanced venerable martial artist. It's not easy for her to defeat him. The man waved his hand and draped a peach-colored robe over his body. His lips curled into a fox-like smile. I'd like to meet this little girl. Chapter 12:30. Junior Brother. At this moment, a voice came from outside the door. Hu Li frowned slightly. Perhaps he was very impatient with the person who came. Just as he was about to tell the person beside him to say that he was not there, the door was pushed open by a slender hand. If Xiao Mo was here, he would definitely recognize the woman who came in. It was the nosy person from before. Yao Mingqi walked in quickly and walked towards Hu Li. Junior brother, I'm back. What's wrong? Don't you welcome me? Hu Li's expression was slightly impatient. I still have something to do. If you want someone to accompany you, you can go find someone else. I'm sorry, but I won't be accompanying you. Junior brother, why are you so cold to me? After all, I was bullied outside today. Yao Mingqi sat down angrily and poured herself a cup of tea. Her face was full of anger. Hearing this, Hu Li's eyes flashed with excitement. Yao Mingqi was bullied outside. Ha ha ha, that's great. Who asked this woman to bother him all day long? Senior brother, the disciple who had not left, looked at Hu Li and reminded him speechlessly. Senior brother, even if you're so excited to see senior sister Yao being bullied, can you not show it so obviously? It's as if you really want someone to bully senior sister Yao. Hu Li also felt that his excitement was too obvious. He hurriedly coughed twice and asked, "What happened?" Fortunately, Yao Mingqi was currently in a state of anger and did not notice Hu Li's flash of excitement. "On my way back today, I saw a man lecturing a child. The child was crying miserably. I was so angry that I wanted to stop the man." "Oh." Hu Li's eyes flashed slightly. "Did the man bully you?" "No," Yao Mingqi's eyes were filled with pity. "He didn't bully me, and I sympathize with him. This man is also very pitiful. The one who really goes too far is the woman who abandons her husband and son. If I see that cruel woman, I will definitely tear her into pieces." When Hu Li saw the light in Yao Mingqi's eyes when she talked about the man, a smile gradually appeared on his face. "That's great. Yao Mingqi, this woman, was finally interested in other men. He could finally get rid of her. Junior brother, don't you think that woman is too much?" Yao Mingqi said angrily. "How can there be such a cruel woman in this world? Such a handsome husband, such a delicate child. She's actually willing to abandon them. If it were me, I would definitely not do such a thing. If he hadn't been abandoned by a woman, why was there no one in the yard where the man lived? What's more, if he hadn't been hurt before, this man wouldn't be so cold and heartless towards others. Especially to a woman like her, he would choose to use such a violent method." Yao Mingqi felt sympathy for Yun Xiao, but she didn't know that in this man's heart, only Yun Luofeng was special. Other than in front of Yun Luofeng, he would melt all the ice in front of him. He would never treat other women differently. "Not bad." Hu Li nodded in agreement. "If it were you, you definitely wouldn't abandon that man. Senior apprentice Sister Mingqi, since you sympathize with him so much, why don't you go find him? It would be best if she went now and returned some peace to herself." "No, he's just been hurt. Even if I go, I won't be able to comfort him. Instead, I'll be rejected by him." Yao Mingqi sighed a little dejectedly. "However, it's a good thing I remember where his house is. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future." Chapter 1231. After saying this, Yao Mingqi stood up and said with a determined gaze, "Junior brother, be a good person to the end. I will use my entire life's energy to heal the damage he has suffered in his heart. I will not give up. Furthermore, if I were that child's mother, I would never let anyone hurt him. Go, I will definitely support you." Hu Li heaved a sigh of relief. Right now, he only wanted to get rid of this pestering woman. "Thank you, junior brother. When I'm done, I will treat you to a meal." "No need for a meal, just don't appear in front of me again." Hu Li raised the corners of his lips and leaned lazily on the chaise longue. He and Yao Mingqi were ranked 9th and 10th respectively, but their strengths were similar. In fact, he was even stronger. However, he had no interest in this ranking, so he had never competed with Yao Mingqi for a ranking. Because of this, Yao Mingqi thought that he had fallen in love with her and had given the 9th place to her. And because of this misunderstanding, he had been pestered for many years. Thinking of those rumors, Hu Li had the urge to vomit. Yao Mingqi was not bad-looking, but she was not the type he liked. How could he give up his ranking for a woman? The funny thing was, Yao Mingqi thought the same. Even though Hu Li had repeatedly said that he had no other intentions towards her, she still thought that Hu Li was too shy to admit it. "Tell me, how did a stubborn person like Yao Mingqi enter the heaven role?" Hu Li pointed in the direction that Yao Mingqi had left and asked speechlessly. The young disciple pondered for a moment. Senior sister Yao's talent is not bad. Her talent was not bad, coupled with the superior environment that she grew up in, she had successfully entered the heaven role. I really pity the man who received her sympathy, Huli smiled. Based on my understanding of Yamingchi, she definitely doesn't understand the real situation. She just imagined a drama of abandoning her husband and son. She even thinks that what she did was right. When it comes to people like her, I just want to tell you to stay as far away from me as possible. The corner of the young disciple's mouth twitched. Senior brother, senior sister Yao's nature is not bad, so what? Huli raised his eyebrows and smiled. I can't stand the way she conducts herself. In comparison, I am more interested in Yun Luofeng. Senior brother Huli, are you going to cause trouble for Yun Luofeng? The young disciple looked at Huli and asked softly. What do you mean cause trouble? Do you know how to speak? Huli glared at him. Am I someone who will cause trouble for others? I just want to wait until tomorrow to talk to her about life and ideals. That's not looking for trouble. The young disciple shuddered. He couldn't help but sympathize with those who were interested in senior brother Huli. Yun Luofeng didn't stay in the academy for long. Once the sun set, she walked out of the academy. Perhaps because she had beaten up Wang Yizhi before, no one dared to stop her, and they could only watch as she left the academy. All these years, she had up all, it, Yun, and Yun, mused, she. Yun, she, Yun, the Yun. All, she had been running all these years, only, she felt, only, and to up. You're back. Yun Shao raised his head and saw Yun Luofeng standing at the doorway. His cool and handsome face slightly curved. Dinner has been prepared. I haven't been by your side during this period of time and you've lost weight. Chapter 1232. Yun Luofeng smiled. I'm used to the meals you prepare. I'm not used to eating outside food. Even the top chefs in the restaurant aren't as good as you. She slowly walked towards the man. Cultivators could go years without eating because spiritual energy could satisfy their hunger. However, when they weren't cultivating, humans still needed to enjoy food. Moreover, how many people would be able to resist the temptation of such a delicacy? Yun Shao, your cooking skills are improving. Yun Luofeng sat down. She used a spoon to gently scoop a spoonful of lotus porridge and tasted the tea. The fragrance filled her nose and melted in her mouth, leaving an endless aftertaste. As long as you like it. Seeing Yun Luofeng's satisfied expression, Yun Zhao's eyes were full of smiles. If you're willing, I can cook for the rest of my life. Okay. Yun Luofeng raised her brows at the man in front of her. Yun Shao, after tasting your food, I'm afraid I can't leave you for the rest of my life. She was already very satisfied with her current life. She hoped that there wouldn't be any more disturbances in the future. Oh right, where are your subordinates? Yun Luofeng seemed to remember something and asked. Yun Shao pondered for a moment and answered. I sent them to find Bai Su. If I'm not wrong, Bai Su has also come to the 7 continents. Bai Su, Yun Luofeng hadn't remembered this man in a long time. Now that she heard Yun Zhao's words, her hand holding the spoon paused. This Bai Su is a scourge. Don't worry. Yun Shao walked behind Yun Luofeng and gently hugged her from behind. I won't let him hurt you. The man's embrace was very reassuring, so reassuring that she let down her guard. Yun Shao, I believe you. If he said he wouldn't let Bai Su hurt her, then she would believe him. The next day. Early morning. After Yun Luofeng finished her breakfast, she was escorted to the academy by Yun Shao. But not long after they left, Yao Mingqi sneakily walked to the entrance of the house. Her hand lightly knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. She pondered for a moment, then leaped over the wall and entered the house from the outside. What's that smell? It smells so good. As soon as Yao Mingqi entered the courtyard, she smelled a fragrant aroma. She followed the aroma into the dining room and saw the leftovers on the table that hadn't been cleaned up in time. There are only 2 bowls and 2 pairs of chopsticks. Looks like I was right. This man lives alone with his son. There is no mistress. Yao Mingqi was very happy with her discovery. However, these dishes were made by that man. She didn't expect that although this man looked so cold, his mind was so meticulous. The food he made was very light and suitable for women. If I can become his wife, I will definitely be very happy. I really don't know what kind of woman doesn't know how lucky she is. Yao Mingqi felt indignant for Yun Xiao. At this moment, she picked up a piece of pastry from the plate and placed it in her mouth to taste it. Instantly, her eyes lit up. She had been pampered since she was young and had tasted all kinds of delicacies. However, none of the delicacies could compare to the pastries in front of him. Who let you in? Suddenly, a cold voice rang out from behind Yao Mingqi. It was filled with a dense killing intent. Chapter 1233. Yao Mingqi's body stiffened. She stiffly turned her head and looked at the man standing outside the dining room. She gulped with difficulty. I was worried about your son, so I came to see him. I didn't mean to sneak into your room. Her eyes were filled with tears as she stared at Yun Xiao aggrievedly. She spoke uneasily. Yun Xiao's eyes slowly swept towards Yao Mingqi's hand and noticed that she had just taken a bite of the pastry. At this moment, killing intent surged from his body, covering the sky and covering the earth as it surged towards Yao Mingqi. You've eaten it. Yao Mingqi was scared silly. I've only eaten half a pastry. Why is this man so angry? Who allowed you to eat it? The man's voice became increasingly cold and murderous, causing Yao Mingqi's heart to tremble. I didn't do it on purpose. I was attracted by the fragrance and could not help but walk over. If you mind, I can return you a plate of pastry. Yao Mingqi hurriedly placed the pastry in her hand on the table. She anxiously rubbed the corner of her clothes as tears shimmered in her eyes. She did not know what she had done wrong. The man raised his hand and a powerful force slammed into Yao Mingqi's body. Yao Mingqi spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground in a sorry state. She stared at Yun Xiao in terror. That's right. This man wants to kill me. Why? Just because I've eaten a piece of pastry. I really didn't do it on purpose. Please let me go. I'll return you a whole plate of pastry. Yao Mingqi was so frightened that she stumbled back. Her terrified eyes stared at the man's cold and handsome face. Auntie. Right at this moment, a soft and mellow voice sounded from behind Yun Xiao. Xiao Mo's eyes held a smile. Don't you understand? This plate of pastry is not something you can eat. Yun Xiao, this petty man, would only give everything he has to Yun Luofeng. How could he allow anyone else to have a share? Even if the other party had only eaten a piece of pastry, Yao Mingqi bit her pale lips. It's only a piece of pastry, is there a need for that? Even though the pastry is delicious, it's not particularly precious. Is there a need to kill me over a piece of pastry? I'm from the West Continent Academy. In order to save her life, Yao Mingqi hurriedly reported Western Continent Academy. Indeed, upon hearing these words, Yun Xiao paused for a moment. Of course, he only paused for a moment because Yun Luofeng was in the Western Continent Academy. But in Yao Mingqi's eyes, she thought that Yun Xiao was afraid of the West Continent Academy's power. Young master, please let me go. I am from the Western Continent Academy. If you let me go, I will repay you in the future. Yao Mingqi raised her teary eyes and begged bitterly. Yun Zhao's cold gaze once again landed on her face. Western Continent Academy. So what? Western Continent Academy. So what? Was there a need for him to put her in his eyes? Yao Mingqi's expression changed once again. She did not expect that Yun Xiao would look down on the West Continent Academy. She gritted her teeth and said, Young master, I did not mean to enter your mansion today. That was because I was worried about the little young master. Plus, I am also worried about you. Please forgive me for my rashness. Xiao Emo stared blankly. This woman was really interested in Yun Xiao. His gaze shifted and he said with a grin, Auntie, are you interested in my father? Yao Mingqi was a little uneasy. She wanted to look at Yun Xiao but did not dare to look at him directly. She could only lower her head and rub the corner of her clothes. Chapter 1234. Unfortunately. Xiao Emo paused. My father doesn't like you. Yao Mingqi was stunned. She raised her head to look at Xiao Emo and blinked in confusion. Why? In any case, she had stood up for him when he was being abused. Logically speaking, shouldn't this child want a mother who can protect him? Why would she say such cruel words? My father only loves my mother. Do you think that you can beat my mother with your charm? Xiao Emo sneered. This woman really doesn't understand the situation. At the very least, she had stood up for him because she was being bullied. That was why he didn't say anything. Now, she doesn't know what's good for her and wants to replace Yun Luofeng's position. Dream on. Yao Mingqi wasn't angry when she heard this. Instead, she hated Yun Xiao and Xiao Emo even more. Look at that damned woman. She abandoned her husband and child, but her husband and child still can't forget about her. Why doesn't a bolt of lightning strike her to death? Father, Xiao Emo blinked and turned to look at Yun Xiao. He blinked furtively. I want to play with this auntie, can I? Yun Xiao, who had wanted to kill Yao Mingqi, retracted his murderous aura and nodded coldly, as you wish. Thank you, father. Xiao Mo's smile was bright and he said father very smoothly. Yun Xiao glanced at him. Remember to set up a formation around the house. I don't want anyone to break in again. Breaking in was one thing, but she actually dared to eat the pastries he made for Yun Luofeng. Yun Xiao stopped in his tracks. That's right. Make her spit out what she just ate. After throwing this sentence down, Yun Xiao walked out without looking back. Only Xiao Emo and Yao Mingqi were left in the dining room. Yao Mingqi crawled up from the ground and her pale face lit up with a flattering smile. Little master, I offended your father because I spoke up for you. Can you let me go now? Let you go? Xiao Emo sneered. Why should I? Indeed, you misunderstood that he was abusing me, so you stood up to help me. I can't say that you're wrong about this. I can only say that you're too stupid. I don't have any scars on my body. How can you tell that my father beat me up? Yao Mingqi's expression changed. This man was not what she had imagined. Everything that happened before was all a misunderstanding of his own. But you made the biggest mistake. Not only did you steal my father's pastries, but you even had wishful thinking about him. Little Mo raised her chin and said arrogantly, I've seen a lot of women like you, but those women didn't live long. Yao Mingqi's eyes darkened. Brat, now that your father isn't here, don't be too presumptuous. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Just as she finished speaking, she saw Yun Xiao, who had once again appeared at the entrance of the dining hall. Her expression changed drastically and she laughed dryly. "Young master, I was only trying to scare the little master just now." Yun Shao didn't seem to hear her words and continued walking towards her. "Young master, you..." Boom. Yun Shao punched Yao Mingqi's back. In an instant, she felt the urge to vomit. She opened her mouth and spat out the pastries that she hadn't digested in time. "You talk too much." Yun Shao looked at Xiao Mo. "By the time you're done, her pastries will have been digested." Chapter 1235. Xiao Mo's mouth twitched. She was unlucky to have met such a petty man like Yun Shao. Bang! However, just when Yao Mingqi thought Yun Shao would leave, Yun Shao's leg had already landed on Yao Mingqi's back. Yao Mingqi was caught off guard and fell head first onto the ground. Her head happened to be covered in her own vomit. "Father! What are you doing now?" Yun Shao thought for a moment and said, "I just remembered that your mother doesn't like people dirtying her territory. If she finds out when she comes back, she will definitely be angry. So, let her lick it clean." When Yao Mingqi heard this, she thought that Yun Shao was still waiting for the heartless woman to return. However, Yun Shao said that Yun Luofeng would be angry when he came back at night. "Father, do you think that it's a waste for her to eat the pastries and want her to spit them out? But now that you're forcing her to eat them, isn't that the same as letting her taste the pastries?" Xiao Mo was speechless. Yun Shao thought for a moment and said, "Take her out and let her vomit outside. That way, your mother won't be angry." At this moment, Xiao Mo pitied Yao Mingqi. After offending Yun Shao, her fate was destined to be miserable. Yun Shao looked coldly at Yao Mingqi, who was trying to get up. He lifted his leg and stepped on her head, forcing her to lick the vomit clean. Even though it was Yao Mingqi's own vomit, she felt her stomach churn. It was extremely disgusting. "Father, after she finishes vomiting, should we kill her?" Xiao Mo made a throat-slitting gesture as his eyes flashed coldly. It was as if killing was as easy as eating to him. "Her blood will dirty the courtyard and your mother won't like it." Yun Shao frowned. "So, we'll cut off the tendons in her arms and legs and throw her out." "All right." Xiao Mo agreed, "Since her legs will sneak into other people's homes and her hands will steal other people's belongings, there's no need to keep her. Why not just cripple her?" The conversation between the two made Yao Mingqi's heart grow colder. She had seen many men in her life, but this was the first time she had seen such a cruel and heartless man. "No, I don't want it, please let me go." Yao Mingqi cried miserably. Her voice was very sorrowful and pitiful. If she had merely snuck in, Yun Shao would not have been so cruel. But what could he do? First, she had secretly eaten his pastries, and now, she was delusional about him. Just based on this point, it was impossible for him to let her go. Yun Shao did not even look at Yao Mingqi as he grabbed her by the collar and dragged her out of the house. No matter how much the other party cried and screamed, his expression did not change in the slightest. He had promised her. As long as there were any peach blossoms, he would break them and not leave a single one behind. First, Yun Luofeng's strength stirred up a storm in the entire academy. Then, another violent hurricane swept over. It was said that Yao Mingqi, the 9th disciple on the heaven list, had her hands and feet broken by someone outside and had already become a cripple. When he found out about this, Yao Mingqi's master flew into a rage. He swore to find the person who crippled his disciple. But, in the face of her master's questioning, Yao Mingqi seemed to be stunned. She stared blankly at the roof beam, her eyes lifeless. However, just as everyone was in a state of shock, another piece of news came out. It was said that Yao Mingqi's hands and feet were not clean. She had sneaked into someone's house and stolen their belongings, which resulted in her hands and feet being crippled. As for the person who had crippled her, it was not widely known. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.